From a quiet Serbian town to the bright lights of the NBA, Nikola Jokic's story begins like a whisper in a crowded room, almost overlooked, almost dismissed, and yet what unfolds is nothing short of extraordinary. Picture a late spring evening in 2014 in Brooklyn at the NBA draft. Teams stood on stage. Prospects posed, cameras flashed. Around the halfway mark of the second round, the name Jokić is announced. Pick number 41. Second round. Not the first wave of hype, not the sure bet. Just a pick, quietly slipping into the tapestry of expectations. But sometimes the quietest picks write the loudest stories. Let's set the scene. The draft analysts talked about athleticism, wingspan, vertical leap. They spoke of rising stars with the explosive bodies, the highlight dunks, the social media presence. There was little mention of Nikola Jokić, a 6'11", 284-pound center from Sombor, Serbia, whose body's craftsmanship didn't scream future champion in the conventional sense. His frame wasn't built for bursts of speed or gravity-defying leaps. Instead, what he brought, and few noticed it at the time, was something subtler: vision, intelligence, craft, anticipation. He had the raw materials of a big man, yes, but he paired them with the mind of a point guard, the rhythm of a conductor, and the calm of someone who knows he's in the right place, even when no one else sees it yet.
So why call him the overlooked MVP pick number 41? Because even as he ascended, winning 3 MVP awards, leading the Denver Nuggets to a franchise-first championship, rewriting the expectations for his position, some of the narratives lagged behind. There remained a sense of surprise, of disbelief, as though his brilliance were a happy accident instead of a deliberate mastery. The basketball world watched him grow, but often failed to fully recognize just how and why he grew. That's the crux of this story, a transformation from under-the-radar pick to one of the most complete players in basketball history, and a challenge to everything we thought big men could be. In this video, we'll travel the full arc of Jokic's journey, his roots in Serbia, how he entered the NBA under modest expectations, the breakout seasons that changed perceptions, the sustained excellence in championships, the statistics and records that would make most players' jaws drop, and importantly, the lingering question: why is someone of this caliber still sometimes called overlooked? Along the way, we'll explore his style, not just what he does, but how he does it, his team impact, how he fits into the larger story of basketball's evolution, and what his legacy might look like.
We'll dive deep into how a second-round pick became a 3-time MVP, how his passing vision from the center position reshaped offenses, how the Nuggets built around him, and how the label overlooked might finally begin to fade. We'll also consider the broader implications, what his rise says about scouting, about role definitions in modern basketball, and how international talent continues to reshape the game. By the end of our journey, I hope you'll not only appreciate Nikola Jokic's achievements, but understand them in vivid detail, feel his quiet dominance, and reconsider just who the most valuable player in the league might truly be. So sit back, relax, and let's unravel the story of pick 41. No flashy entry required, just sheer brilliance.
The story of Nikola Jokić doesn't begin in an arena of roaring fans or bright television lights. It begins in the quiet rhythms of Sombor, a small town in the north of Serbia, where the mornings smell of earth and hay, and the evenings are still enough to hear your own breath. There, long before the world called him an MVP, he was just Nikša, a tall, gentle kid who loved two things above all else: his family and basketball. Sombor isn't the kind of place that raises global stars. It's a farming community with wide streets, low houses, and a pace of life that moves at the speed of a horse cart. That's not a poetic exaggeration. Nikola grew up literally racing horses with his brothers. His family kept them as a hobby, and he often says that watching the animals taught him patience, timing, rhythm. Even today, after NBA championships and MVP trophies, his summers still return him there, to the barns and the horses, where the world feels sane again.
In that setting, basketball began as a casual game played with his older brothers, Nemanja and Strahinja, both of whom were larger, stronger, and fiercely competitive. They didn't go easy on him. They shoved him, blocked his shots, yelled when he missed. That, too, was an education. To survive those backyard duels, Jokić learned creativity, finding angles, using fakes, crafting passes that didn't rely on strength but on deception. Without knowing it, he was developing the instincts that would later make him one of the most cerebral players the sport has ever seen. When he joined local youth teams, Jokić didn't immediately stand out. Coaches noticed he wasn't particularly fast or athletic, but he had touch. He could shoot softly, like his hands had learned gentleness before they learned power. And he could pass, always, everywhere, to anyone. While other big men crashed and powered through, Jokić moved like a chess player, 2 moves ahead. Still, in a basketball world obsessed with physicality, that skill set was often dismissed. His professional journey began with KK Mega Basket, a club in Belgrade known for developing young talent. There, he started to refine his game under structured coaching and higher competition. It wasn't glamorous. Small crowds, modest gyms, but it was the perfect laboratory for his mind. He'd arrive early, study film, learn to read defenses like patterns rather than chaos. By the time NBA scouts began to notice, he was producing quietly efficient numbers in the Adriatic League, though still far from a highlight reel darling.
When the 2014 NBA draft arrived, few outside Serbia even knew his name. On American television, ESPN didn't even show his selection live. Instead, his draft moment happened during a commercial for a fast food burrito. Somewhere between breaks, the Denver Nuggets used their 41st pick to call his name. No fanfare, no dramatic announcement. A player few had heard of, chosen in a range where most prospects never even reach a starting lineup. Scouting reports described him as skilled but slow, limited athletically, possibly a stash player who might stay in Europe. No one predicted multiple MVP awards. Yet, Denver's front office, guided by a deep-cut scouting department and then executive Tim Connolly, saw something others didn't: an unusual feel for the game, a touch, a vision that couldn't be taught. They decided to take a chance. Jokić didn't join the Nuggets immediately. He played one more season with Mega, where his confidence and production soared. In that year, he averaged roughly 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, while shooting efficiently from the field, numbers that hinted at the versatile, unselfish style that would soon define him. More importantly, his understanding of spacing, tempo, and flow deepened. He began orchestrating offenses like a conductor, his passes cutting through defenses that hadn't yet realized they were already checkmated. When he finally arrived in Denver for the 2015-16 NBA season, expectations were modest. The Nuggets were rebuilding, and Jokić was just another name on a roster full of question marks. But almost immediately, something clicked. In practices, his teammates noticed his uncanny timing. Guards who cut toward the basket would suddenly find the ball already in their hands. Shooters in the corner received passes without looking. It wasn't flash. It was inevitability.
Jokic's first year ended with him averaging about 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. Modest on paper, but the film told a deeper story. Every possession where he touched the ball seemed to hum with rhythm. He made everyone around him better. The Nuggets, once predictable, became unpredictable. Plays didn't just run through the point guard anymore. They flowed through the big man at the elbow, who saw the court like few centers ever had. His rise wasn't meteoric, it was methodical. That's important because so much of Jokic's greatness is tied to patience. He's never been the player who explodes through trends. He dissolves them quietly. His early seasons were full of subtle progressions, learning how to deal with physical defenders, how to pace himself across an 82-game schedule, how to lead without forcing. By 2016-17, his averages jumped to nearly 17 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and fans began to whisper about his triple-double potential.
What truly set him apart in those formative years wasn't just statistics, it was style. Watching him play felt different. He'd post up, then flick a no-look pass to a cutting teammate. He'd fake a handoff, pivot, and drop in a floater off one leg. His movements lacked urgency, but overflowed with control. There was poetry in his slowness. In an era that celebrated speed and explosiveness, Jokić moved like someone who understood that space and timing were the true currencies of basketball. In those early Nuggets years, you could already sense the philosophy that would later define his MVP seasons: basketball as connection. For him, every player was a note in the same melody, and his job was to make the music coherent, whether it was a lob to a cutting wing or a simple handoff that freed a shooter. His decisions elevated others. He was redefining what it meant to dominate, not through overpowering, but through understanding. By the time the league realized what was happening, the so-called slow center from Sombor had turned the Nuggets into one of the most fluid, unpredictable teams in basketball. Analysts began to search for comparisons. Bill Walton, Arvydas Sabonis, but none fit perfectly. Jokić was building something new, an archetype that didn't yet exist. The point center, the fulcrum of a system where every pass carried intention.
Yet, even as he blossomed, he carried that same humble energy from his hometown. After practices, he'd retreat to quiet moments,
avoiding the spotlight, often joking that he still missed the simplicity of home. And that may be the key to understanding his rise. He never chased stardom. He simply kept doing what made sense to him, reading, adapting, and connecting. From Somber's small gyms to Denver's roaring arenas, Nikola Jokic's path wasn't a fairy tale. It was something rarer, a story of quiet persistence, proof that greatness doesn't need noise to announce itself. By the time the world caught up, he had already begun reshaping basketball itself. By the time Nikola Jokic's rookie season ended, the Denver Nuggets had realized something unusual. Their offense looked smoother whenever the ball touched his hand. It wasn't just the numbers, though those steadily climbed. It was the feel. The rhythm of possessions changed. Instead of isolation plays or forced drives, the game began to flow like a current, guided by an unlikely conductor in a front-court body. The ball moved faster, the spacing improved, and teammates started cutting differently, trusting that somehow Jokić would find them. The 2015-16 season was about discovery, both for him and for Denver. Coaches experimented with lineups, alternating between young bigs, Jokić and Jusuf Nurkic. At first, the team wasn't sure who would anchor the future. Nurkic had the classic physical presence coaches loved, big, strong, imposing. Jokić had finesse and vision, but not yet the polish or authority. Still, as the months passed, the differences became undeniable. Whenever Jokić was on the court, the Nuggets' offense simply breathed easier. Shots came in rhythm, turnovers dropped, and even veterans began to defer to his intuition. The next year, 2016-17, became the real revelation. The coaching staff handed him more responsibility, letting the offense run through him at the top of the key. What emerged was something revolutionary, a center functioning as the team's primary playmaker. Few in NBA history had done it with such poise. The numbers exploded. Nearly 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game on elite efficiency. The advanced metrics loved him. The eye test confirmed it. What fans saw was a big man who could orchestrate possessions like Steve Nash or Chris Paul, only from 15 feet out. The highlight reels of that period told a different story than most stars. There weren't violent dunks or chase-down blocks. Instead, there were flicks of the wrist, one-handed passes threaded between defenders, bounce passes through impossible gaps, and soft-touch floaters released at improbable angles. The NBA hadn't seen this combination of size and artistry since Arvydas Sabonis, and even then, Jokic's rhythm was distinctly his own. He played like he was hearing a song no one else could, and the rest of the team was slowly learning the melody.
His chemistry with Jamal Murray began to take shape around this time. Murray, a young guard still learning the NBA's pace, quickly discovered that if he simply moved, Jokić would find him. They developed what would become one of the league's most intuitive two-man games. Dribble handoffs that looked ordinary until they weren't, subtle hesitations that turned into backdoor cuts, moments where both players seemed to improvise yet arrive at the same idea simultaneously. What started as promising connection would later evolve into championship-level synergy.
But even as Jokić blossomed, not everyone understood what they were witnessing. Analysts praised his passing, but questioned his defense, conditioning, or killer instinct. He didn't fit the archetype of a modern superstar. He didn't talk trash, didn't seek the spotlight, didn't perform anger or intensity the way fans were used to. He smiled after mistakes. He helped opponents up. For some, that calm demeanor read as indifference. For those watching closely, it was something else, an inner stillness, the same composure that let him slow the game down in his mind while everyone else was rushing.
Denver's progress mirrored his development. The Nuggets missed the playoffs in 2016-17 by a single game, but the message was clear. They'd found their cornerstone. The following season, 2017-18, saw his numbers rise again, over 18 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and his first triple-doubles became routine rather than rare. Opposing teams began to game plan specifically for him, sending double teams to force the ball out of his hands. It rarely mattered. He'd pivot, survey, and slip the ball to an open shooter before the defense could react. By now, Denver's offense had a distinct identity: unselfish, high motion, unpredictable. Every player touched the ball, every cut mattered. Analysts coined new phrases to describe it: point center offense, the hub system, Jokić ball. For the first time in years, the Nuggets had not just a star, but a style, one that revolved around intelligence rather than athleticism.
Off the court, Jokic's personality endeared him to fans. Reporters found him refreshingly uninterested in stardom. He gave short, self-deprecating interviews, often laughing at his own highlights. When asked about triple-doubles, he shrugged. "It's just basketball," he'd say, with the same unbothered tone one might use to describe grocery shopping. Yet that humility hid a fierce competitor. Teammates noticed his sharp memory for mistakes. He'd recall a missed rotation or lazy pass days later, replaying it mentally until he understood how to fix it. The 2018-19 season became the true turning point. Denver surged to 54 wins, finishing second in the Western Conference. Jokić averaged roughly 20 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, earning his first All-Star selection and All-NBA first-team honors. For the first time, he was firmly in the MVP conversation. More importantly, the Nuggets had returned to relevance. Their offense ranked among the league's best, not because of star power isolation plays, but because of trust and timing. Every cut, every pass, every screen flowed through their Serbian centerpiece.
In the playoffs, Jokić faced the scrutiny that defines true stars. The first-round series against the San Antonio Spurs tested his composure against one of the most disciplined defenses in basketball. He responded with averages that bordered on surreal: 23 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, nearly a triple-double across the series. In the second round against Portland, he played 65 minutes in a 4-overtime marathon, finishing with 33 points, 18 rebounds, 14 assists, a stat line that read like fiction. Denver ultimately fell short, but Jokic's legend grew. He wasn't just productive, he was resilient, intelligent, and entirely himself.
That series also introduced a new narrative around him: efficiency under exhaustion. Most players fade late in marathon games. Jokić seemed to sharpen. His pace, slow, deliberate, controlled, became an advantage. He never rushed, never relied on bursts that depleted his energy. Instead, he conserved effort through precision. Every movement mattered. Every pass saved a dribble. Every decision bought time. What once seemed like lack of athleticism was revealed as a different kind of athletic intelligence. By 2019-20, Denver had matured around him. Jamal Murray's scoring exploded, role players flourished, and the Nuggets became one of the league's most cohesive teams. Their ball movement was symphonic, each possession a dance of reads and reactions. Jokic's averages held steady, but his influence deepened. Teammates described playing with him as addictive, because once you experienced that level of trust and rhythm, anything less felt chaotic. Then came the NBA bubble in Orlando. The surreal 2020 playoffs played amid global uncertainty. Denver found itself down 3-1 twice, first to Utah, then to the Clippers, and both times they came back. Jokic's fingerprints were on every possession. Against the Clippers, he dismantled elite defenders with calm passes and high-arcing jumpers, recording 22 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists per game. The Nuggets reached the Western Conference Finals, and suddenly the league couldn't ignore him.
He wasn't a novelty anymore. He was a problem, a chess master on the court, bending games to his will without breaking a sweat. Even as the Nuggets fell to the Lakers, it was clear that something monumental was forming. Jokić had transcended the label of underrated. He was now the centerpiece of a contender. And yet, even then, there was an undercurrent of disbelief. Pundits often prefaced his praise with qualifiers: for a second-round pick, for someone without elite athleticism. But that's precisely what made his ascent so compelling. Every success chipped away at the old hierarchies of scouting and stardom. He was redefining what greatness looked like, not a spectacle of motion, but a study in mastery. By the end of those early Nuggets years, Jokić had transformed from a curiosity into a cornerstone. His rise wasn't about proving doubters wrong. It was about proving that intelligence, vision, and patience could build an empire of their own. The quiet pick from Sombor had turned Denver into a perennial playoff team and had begun to reshape how the world understood the center position. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, and he wasn't conventional. But the numbers spoke, the film whispered louder, and the winds began to sing. Nikola Jokić had established not just his impact, but his inevitability.
The 2020-21 NBA season began in silence. Empty arenas, cardboard cutouts, echoes of shoes on wood instead of cheers. It was a strange backdrop for greatness, and yet somehow fitting, because Nikola Jokic's ascent to most valuable player didn't need fireworks. It needed space. Space for the world to finally notice what had been there all along: a basketball mind operating on a higher frequency.
At the start of that season, few experts picked Jokić as an MVP candidate. The Nuggets were good, not dominant. His stat lines were impressive, but quiet. Numbers that didn't shout for attention until you really looked at them. But as the weeks passed, something undeniable began to emerge. Every night, Jokić was putting up performances that didn't just fill box scores, they redefined what a center could be. 26 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. On some nights, 10 or more. His shooting percentages were absurd, over 56% from the field, 38% from three, nearly 87% from the line. Efficiency that would make a guard jealous, production that would humble a power forward, and vision that could lead an orchestra. What made that season special wasn't just the numbers, it was the control. Jokić played the game like time belonged to him. When defenders lunged, he waited. When they sagged off, he floated in a jumper so soft it seemed allergic to the rim. When the double team came, he didn't panic. He smiled, because doubling him meant someone, somewhere, had made a mistake. One flick of his wrist, and the ball would find the open man in rhythm as though gravity itself had shifted in Denver's favor.
That year, Jokić recorded 16 triple-doubles in 72 games, by far the most ever by a center at that point. But more than the quantity was the quality. Each one was organic, born from reading the game, not chasing numbers. In post-game interviews, he often seemed genuinely puzzled when reporters brought up milestones. "It's nice," he'd say with a shrug, "but we just played good basketball." To understand how radical his rise was, it's important to remember the context. The NBA had spent decades moving away from the traditional big man. The league of the 2010s was built on speed, spacing, and the dominance of guards and wings. Steph Curry's deep shooting, LeBron James's athletic orchestration, Kevin Durant's silky scoring. Centers were asked to screen, roll, rebound, protect the rim. They were support beams, not architects. Jokić flipped that structure upside down. Suddenly, the offense started with the big man. The ball lived in his hands. The guards cut for him. The playbook rewrote itself. Every possession became a small experiment in physics and intuition. At the top of the key, Jokić would hold the ball like a patient teacher, waiting for the class to move. A guard would flash to the corner. He'd fake the pass. The defender would shift half a step, and that was enough. The real pass zipped through the smallest possible lane to a cutter for an easy layup. It was basketball as problem-solving, each movement a line in an equation only he could see. That vision, the ability to see passing angles before they existed, wasn't just talent, it was comprehension. Teammates often said it felt like Jokić was controlling them telepathically, like he'd already decided where they needed to be 3 seconds before they did. Opponents described defending him as a nightmare because you couldn't predict what he'd value more, a pass, a shot, a screen, or a fake. The moment you tried to anticipate, he'd do the opposite. Not out of showmanship, but because that was simply the right decision. The 2020-21 campaign became an unfolding revelation. Jokic's performance dragged Denver upward, even after Jamal Murray tore his ACL late in the season, a devastating blow that should have crippled the team's offense. Instead, Jokić responded by becoming even more unselfish, even more patient, even more dangerous. He didn't complain, didn't grandstand. He adapted. The Nuggets finished with the 4th seed in the Western Conference, and Jokić became the first center in over 20 years to win the NBA MVP award, joining names like Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But his version of dominance looked nothing like theirs. It wasn't brute strength or vertical power. It was comprehension, grace, timing. In a league obsessed with highlight dunks and viral clips, Jokic's highlights looked almost meditative. A spinning hook, a no-look bounce pass, a one-legged fadeaway off the wrong foot. Even his celebrations were understated. Just a grin, a shrug, maybe a high five. It was as if he was reminding everyone, this isn't magic, it's method. That first MVP didn't just crown a great player, it forced a conversation. Analysts debated whether someone without explosive athleticism could truly be the league's most valuable. But as they scrolled through film and analytics, resistance gave way to reverence. His player efficiency rating led the league. His win shares, box plus minus, and value over replacement player were all historic. Every advanced metric screamed what his demeanor whispered. He wasn't just valuable, he was indispensable. His understanding of geometry on the court became legend. Take his somber shuffle, the unorthodox one-legged fadeaway jumper that he shoots off his right foot, often leaning away like he's half falling. It looks wrong until it's perfect. Born in those long European summers when he practiced on uneven ground, it became a signature. A defiance of textbook form, as if he'd proven that balance was optional when you understood physics well enough. Another part of his uniqueness was emotional rhythm. Most players feed off adrenaline. Jokić feeds off equilibrium. He can score 30 and a half and still look like he's daydreaming about feeding his horses. That detachment isn't lack of care, it's control. It's what lets him stay steady when others tighten up. In high-pressure situations, when the crowd rises and the moment swells, he simply exhales and finds the open man. And then there's his efficiency as a scorer. Jokić isn't a volume shooter, he's a precision shooter. His true shooting percentage hovers near historic levels, built on floaters, bank shots, and touch shots released before defenders even react. Watching him score feels less like watching an athlete and more like watching an artisan, someone who's carved out every angle, every counter, every hesitation. That season also gave birth to an evolving conversation about leadership. He wasn't the vocal type. He didn't give fiery halftime speeches or pound his chest. But his teammates called him the calm eye in every storm. When young players missed assignments, he'd quietly pull them aside during a timeout, sketch a motion with his hands, nod, and move on. His leadership wasn't loud, it was constant. Over time, it became contagious. Even as accolades piled up, Jokić seemed almost embarrassed by them. It's a team award, he'd say, meaning it. And yet, There was poetry in that humility, because everything about his rise embodied contradiction. A superstar who didn't want to be a superstar. A center who passed more than he scored. A slow player who made the game faster for everyone else. When the MVP trophy finally reached him in Serbia, where he was spending time with family, the footage showed him accepting it with the same casualness he brought to tip-offs. No grand speech, no tears, just gratitude, laughter, and the faint sound of horses in the background. For him, it wasn't a coronation. It was a continuation. That first MVP didn't mark the end of his journey. It marked the moment the world caught up. The world saw numbers. He saw patterns. The world saw a center. He saw a point of connection. The world saw a surprise MVP. He saw basketball played the way it was meant to be. Fluid, intelligent, selfless.
As the 2021-22 season loomed, the question shifted from, can he do it, to, how far can this go? Because by then, Nikola Jokić had already changed the shape of the game. And yet, watching him walk back onto the court, expression unreadable, body language calm, it was clear he wasn't done. The orchestra had just finished its overture. When Nikola Jokić hoisted his first MVP trophy, the basketball world still treated him like an anomaly, a beautiful accident in a league engineered around explosiveness. But what came next proved that his dominance wasn't luck or novelty, it was architecture. The second MVP season, then the third, revealed not a fluke, but a formula. Intelligence, patience, and consistency layered until brilliance became routine. The 2021-22 season began with lowered expectations for Denver. Jamal Murray was still recovering from his ACL injury, Michael Porter Jr. went down early with a back issue, and the roster leaned heavily on role players. Most analysts predicted a middle-of-the-pack finish, maybe a brief playoff appearance if Jokić carried them. What no one predicted was how effortlessly he would shoulder that load. Without his top scorers, he became everything: point guard, power forward, anchor, compass. Statistically, it was staggering. Jokić averaged 27.1 points, 13.8 rebounds, and 7.9 assists per game. The first player in NBA history to record 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 500 assists in a single season. He did it on absurd efficiency, nearly 58% shooting from the field. His advanced metrics shattered records. A PER over 32, the highest ever recorded at the time. But numbers alone didn't capture what it felt like to watch him that year. It was like observing a clockwork system built on improvisation, paradoxical, precise, human.
Every game carried the same quiet rhythm. A touch at the elbow, a spin into a floater, a one-handed whip pass to a cutting Aaron Gordon, a defensive rebound turned instantly into a full-court assist. Even when opponents schemed double teams, he treated them like puzzles. Step back, pivot, bounce pass through the gap, solve. There was no panic, only recalibration. He didn't dominate by overpowering defenders, but by removing their options, one decision at a time. By spring, the debate was over. Despite the Nuggets finishing 6th in the West, voters recognized that Jokic's value transcended record. He won back-to-back MVPs, joining an exclusive lineage: Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yet, when the announcement came, his reaction was predictably understated. A small smile,
a handshake for teammates, then back to work. To him, it wasn't coronation. It was confirmation that doing things the right way still mattered. Still, critics surfaced. Some argued that an MVP should come from a top-seeded team. Others clung to the idea that his game lacked spectacle. But the irony was that Jokic's brilliance was spectacle, just of a subtler kind. His game invited contemplation rather than explosion. Where most stars turned chaos into drama, he turned it into artful order. Then came the next chapter, the one that silenced nearly all debate.
The 2022-23 season began with Denver healthy again. Murray returned. Porter returned. The roster had balance, spacing, chemistry. For the first time, Jokić wasn't asked to do everything. He was asked to orchestrate everyone. The result was historic. The Nuggets finished 53-29, top of the Western Conference, with Jokić posting 24.5 points, 11.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists on nearly 63% shooting. He was a fraction of a rebound short of averaging a triple-double as a center, something previously considered impossible. At this point, the basketball conversation shifted from skepticism to reverence. Analysts began calling his game inevitable. Every possession felt like watching gravity reinvent itself. Opponents knew what was coming, yet couldn't stop it. He'd catch the ball at the high post, scan the floor, and the defense would freeze, caught between cutting off the pass and guarding the shot. His patience created pressure. His calm created chaos. In the playoffs, that inevitability turned prophetic. Round by round, he dismantled the Western Conference like a watchmaker taking apart a clock. Against Minnesota, he outthought Rudy Gobert, one of the league's premier defenders. Against Phoenix, he faced Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and still averaged a near triple-double as a center, something previously considered impossible. In the playoffs, that inevitability turned prophetic. Round by round, he dismantled the Western Conference like a watchmaker taking apart a clock. Against Minnesota, he outthought Rudy Gobert, one of the league's premier defenders. Against Phoenix, he faced Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and still averaged a near triple-double as a center. His series averages? 27.8 points, 14.5 rebounds, and 11.7 assists. He became the first player in history to record over 500 points, 250 rebounds, and 150 assists in a single postseason. And yet, through it all, he never changed expression. No chest-pounding, no dramatic declarations, just the occasional grin, the quiet word to a teammate, the same steady jog back on defense. When the Nuggets swept the Lakers to reach their first NBA Finals, he celebrated by hugging his brothers, smiling for a second, and heading to the locker room.
In the finals, the stage belonged fully to him. Miami's zone defense, its unpredictability, its constant motion was supposed to rattle him. Instead, it became the perfect canvas. In Game 3, he delivered a 32-21-10 triple-double, the first in finals history to combine those numbers. By Game 5, Denver closed the series, and Jokić raised the Bill Russell Finals MVP trophy, the ultimate validation of substance over style. In the post-game interview, when asked about celebrating, he famously muttered, "The job is done. We can go home now." The quote went viral, not for arrogance, but for its purity. To him, basketball had always been a job done with love, not spectacle. The goal was completion, not coronation. That championship marked a transformation. Jokić was no longer the underrated MVP. He was a champion, a global icon, and the embodiment of a new basketball era, one where intellect and creativity outweighed raw explosiveness. Still, his humility remained untouched. The parade came and went. He smiled, danced briefly, and then boarded a plane back to Sombor. Horses awaited. The rhythm of home called louder than any crowd. As the 2023-24 season began, few doubted his supremacy. And then, as if to test the limits of disbelief, he did it again. Another MVP season, another run of dominance so consistent it bordered on surreal, averaging roughly 26 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists. He captured his third MVP, becoming only the 9th player in NBA history to do so. But context matters. Jokić achieved this in an era of unprecedented offensive talent, an age of scoring explosions and highlight culture, and still made efficiency feel elegant.
By now, discussions about his place in history were unavoidable. Analysts compared him to legends. His passing, magic-like. His vision, bird-like. His steadiness, Duncan-like. But the truth was simpler. Jokić wasn't a mirror of anyone. He was synthesis. He took elements from everywhere and recomposed them into something wholly new. 3 MVPs in 4 years. A championship, a finals MVP, and through it all, the same slow smile, the same soft-spoken interviews, the same horses waiting in Serbia. For fans who loved him, that humility wasn't detachment, it was philosophy. He seemed to suggest that greatness doesn't have to consume you, it can simply be. Beyond the numbers, beyond the trophies, his sustained excellence challenged how the basketball world defined greatness itself. He proved that dominance can be quiet, that charisma can exist in calm, that the most unstoppable force in a league obsessed with motion might be the player who never hurries. By the end of that third MVP campaign, opponents had run out of answers. Double him, and he'd find the open man. Single cover him, and he'd score with soft touch. Force him into transition, and he'd still thread passes full stride. The brilliance wasn't in his highlights, it was in his predictability. Everyone knew what was coming, and it still worked.
And so the narrative that began as a curiosity, a second-round pick making good, evolved into something mythic. Pick 41 had become the center of basketball's universe, not through flash, but through fluency. He wasn't fighting to prove he belonged anymore. He was redefining belonging itself. As the cameras turned off and the interviews faded, he returned home again. The season's end found him back in Sombor, guiding a horse cart through the stillest air. The world's most valuable player blending back into the landscape that shaped him. His dominance, like his demeanor, remained steady, enduring, unhurried, undeniable.
When the 2022-23 NBA season reached its climax, it wasn't just a team fighting for a trophy. It was the resolution of a long, deliberate composition, a symphony that had taken nearly a decade to write. Every note of Denver's success was familiar by then. The patient orchestration, the seamless passing, the trust that held each movement together. But this time, the melody reached perfection. The Denver Nuggets, for years labeled promising but incomplete, had finally arrived at equilibrium. They had endured seasons of heartbreak, blown leads, injuries, and doubt, and each disappointment had quietly shaped their identity. Jokić was the through line in all of it, the constant calm in the middle of the storm. His leadership wasn't loud, but it was absolute. He didn't command his teammates. He coordinated them.
By the time the playoffs began, Denver's chemistry was so natural it looked telepathic. Every cut, every rotation, every extra pass felt inevitable. The system wasn't a playbook. It was an instinct born of years together. Jamal Murray had returned to form, his confidence blooming again after the long recovery. Aaron Gordon, once a miscast star in Orlando, had found his perfect niche, a defensive anchor, slashing finisher, and partner in motion. Michael Porter Jr. became the long-range valve that stretched defenses thin, while Kentavious Caldwell-Pope brought championship poise from his Lakers days. At the center of it all was Jokić, the nucleus, the constant hum of order. Every championship team has an identity. Some thrive on raw emotion, others on speed or size. Denver thrived on trust. That trust was built on Jokic's reliability. He wasn't a leader by volume, he was a leader by evidence. Every possession proved his consistency. If you cut, he'd find you. If you missed, he'd return to you the next play. His faith in teammates became contagious. Over time, the Nuggets stopped second-guessing themselves. They started believing in his belief. The 2023 playoffs began against the Minnesota Timberwolves, a series that could have been a trap. Big, athletic, and hungry, Minnesota tested Denver's composure early, but Jokić dismantled them methodically, averaging 26 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, and never allowing chaos to take root. The Nuggets advanced in 5 games, and the machine was humming. Next came the Phoenix Suns, loaded with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, 2 elite scorers capable of setting entire arenas on fire. On paper, Phoenix had the firepower, but basketball, at its heart, is about rhythm, not noise. Denver's rhythm never broke. Jokić averaged an astonishing 34.5 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, including a 53-point masterpiece that felt more surgical than explosive. After Game 6, Durant admitted, "You can't speed him up. You can't throw him off. He just plays at his own pace." That, more than any statistic, described his dominance.
Then came the Western Conference Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers, the franchise of legends, the symbol of tradition and glamour. The narrative was irresistible. The unheralded franchise versus the league's brightest stage. But Denver didn't flinch. In Game 1, Jokić posted 34 points, 21 rebounds, 14 15 assists, controlling the game from every angle. The Lakers adjusted, doubled him, switched coverages. None of it mattered. Denver swept the series 4-0, and Jokić was named Western Conference Finals MVP, the first ever recipient of the Magic Johnson Trophy. The moment carried poetic irony, a point center accepting an award named after the archetypal point guard. By the time the NBA Finals arrived, the Nuggets weren't the underdog story anymore. They were inevitability wrapped in humility. Their opponent, the Miami Heat, embodied grit, an eighth seed built on defense, culture, and defiance. Miami had beaten giants in their path, toppling Milwaukee and Boston with effort and precision. But facing Denver was like stepping into a slow-moving avalanche. You saw it coming, you braced, and it still overwhelmed you. In Game 1, Jokić scored only 27, but controlled every possession, finishing with 14 assists. The Heat couldn't decide whether to guard him one-on-one or collapse the paint, because either choice opened a new wound. When they doubled, shooters rained threes. When they stayed home, Jokić scored softly in the post. In Game 3, he recorded the first 30-20-10 triple-double in finals history. 32 points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists. Murray added a triple-double of his own. The two of them became the first teammates ever to achieve that feat in the same finals game.
Denver closed the series in 5 games. Jokić averaged 30.2 points, 14 rebounds, 7.2 assists, earning Finals MVP unanimously. When the buzzer sounded in Ball Arena, confetti fell, and Jokić barely raised his arm. His first reaction was to hug his teammates, then ask a staff member when the championship parade was. When told it was on Thursday, he frowned playfully. "No, I need to go home." The clip went viral. A global superstar who wanted to trade parades for peace. But that reaction, that quiet longing for normalcy, was the essence of who he'd always been. For Denver, the championship meant more than a banner. It was the fulfillment of decades of near misses. The Nuggets had entered the NBA in 1976 and spent nearly half a century chasing relevance. Legends like Alex English, Carmelo Anthony, and Chauncey Billups had come close, but never crossed the threshold. Now, with Jokić, they had done it, not through flash, but through cohesion. The franchise's culture mirrored its star. Head coach Michael Malone emphasized accountability over ego, teamwork over headlines. The locker room became a reflection of Jokic's philosophy. Everyone contributing, everyone connected. Veterans like Jeff Green and Bruce Brown thrived because they knew their roles would be respected. Younger players grew because Jokic's unselfishness demanded their involvement. In a league often divided by hierarchy, Denver functioned like a circle. No edges, no corners, only motion. The tactical beauty of their offense drew comparisons to European systems, a blend of motion principles, cutting lanes, and positional fluidity rarely seen in the NBA. Analysts noted that Denver's attack didn't rely on set plays. It relied on reading.
Every possession was an improvisation informed by trust. That trust was Jokic's greatest creation. For teammates, playing with him was like being inside an idea. Jamal Murray once said, "You just move and he'll find you." It's almost scary. Aaron Gordon echoed that sentiment. He gives you confidence because he never blames. If you miss, he says, "We'll get the next one." That atmosphere of grace allowed players to take risks, to cut harder, shoot freer, and defend without fear. When Jokić lifted the Finals MVP trophy, the world finally aligned around what Denver had known for years. He wasn't just the center of their offense, he was the soul of their organization. The banner that now hangs in Ball Arena doesn't just commemorate victory, it marks a philosophical shift. It says that intelligence can outlast explosiveness, that patience can outplay chaos, and that connection between players, between ideas, between moments can build something eternal. After the parade, he finally went home. In Serbia, the streets of Sombor filled with cheering neighbors, not paparazzi. The same boy who once watched horses trot through fields now stood as an NBA champion, three-time MVP, and the embodiment of quiet excellence. Yet, in interviews, he spoke more about family than basketball. "I'm just happy it's over," he laughed, meaning the season, not the dream, because for him, basketball was never the entire world. It was just one way of understanding it.
That summer, as he returned to the rhythm of ordinary life, the stables, the open air, the clip-clop of hooves on dirt roads, it was easy to forget that just weeks earlier he dominated the highest level of the sport. And perhaps that's the point. Jokic's greatness doesn't depend on contrast. He's not defined by the crowd's noise, but by the silence that follows it, a silence filled with the echo of accomplishment, of teamwork perfected, of basketball played exactly as it should be. The 2023 championship wasn't just Denver's first. It was proof that the overlooked can redefine the entire hierarchy. It was the vindication of a philosophy built on balance and trust. And in that moment, Pick 41, the quiet kid from Sombor, didn't just lift a trophy, he lifted an idea. That greatness, true greatness, doesn't always arrive with spectacle. Sometimes it comes with a shrug, a smile, and a whisper that the job is done. If Nikola Jokic's artistry gives basketball its poetry, his numbers provide the proof. The statistics don't merely confirm his brilliance, they document an evolution, the slow rewriting of what the modern big man can be. And though numbers can never fully capture rhythm, they do something almost as important. They reveal patterns, and Jokic's patterns are symphonies of consistency. Over the course of 9 seasons, Jokić has averaged around 21.8 points, 10.9 rebounds, 7.2 assists, and nearly 58% shooting from the field. Those are career marks, not a hot streak, not a single shining year. For most players, they would represent an all-time peak. For Jokić, they've become baseline reality. He has turned the extraordinary into the expected. What makes these figures so startling isn't their volume, but their balance. Rarely in NBA history has a player combined scoring, rebounding, and playmaking at such symmetrical levels. In any given season, you'll find names clustered near the top of one category: scoring leaders, rebounding kings, assist masters. But Jokić appears on all three lists simultaneously, year after year, a statistical omnipresence. That equilibrium extends to efficiency. His true shooting percentage regularly hovers around 65%, a mark that belongs to rim-running centers, not players initiating offense. His assist-to-turnover ratio rivals that of elite point guards, despite handling the ball in traffic among defenders far taller and stronger than most perimeter playmakers face. And his player efficiency rating, PER, an advanced stat that attempts to summarize all contributions into one number, sits among the top 5 in league history, alongside names like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Wilt Chamberlain.
But numbers, like art, gain meaning through contrast. To grasp Jokic's uniqueness, it helps to compare. Wilt Chamberlain once averaged 50 points a game. His dominance was physical, a force of size and stamina. Magic Johnson redefined passing, transforming the court into a stage for improvisation. Larry Bird fused shooting with vision, giving the forward position new purpose. Jokić blends elements of all three: Wilt's interior control, Magic's orchestration, Bird's clairvoyance. Yet none fully describe him. His records belong to categories that never existed before him. Consider the triple-double, the statistical shorthand for all-around greatness. Before Jokić, it was the domain of guards. Oscar Robertson set the standard in the 1960s. Russell Westbrook revived it with athletic ferocity in the 2010s. But Jokić changed its geography. He made the triple-double a front-court phenomenon. As of 2025, he has surpassed 130 career triple-doubles, more than any center in NBA history, and still climbing. Each one is a quiet rebellion against basketball's old definitions of role and responsibility. Even the speed with which he produces them defies precedent. In 2018, against the Milwaukee Bucks, Jokić recorded a triple-double in just 14 minutes, 33 seconds. The fastest in league history. No elaborate fast breaks, no chase for numbers, just one stretch of flawless rhythm, a masterclass in inevitability.
His statistical fingerprints run deeper than highlight milestones. Look at advanced metrics, those invisible layers of measurement that attempt to translate feel into data. Win shares, a metric estimating how many team victories a player directly contributes to, place him among the top active leaders despite fewer seasons played. Box plus minus and value over replacement player, or VORP, which weigh impact on both ends, consistently rank him at or near the top of the league. Across a 5-year window from 2020 to 2025. Jokic's combination of efficiency, durability, and production has no statistical equal. But raw data can only hint at what his numbers mean inside a game. Each assist tells a story of anticipation, seeing a cut before it happens. Each rebound reflects positioning learned through geometry, not vertical leap. Each point is the product of patience, a shot taken only when the equation demands it. Where most players' stats pulse with volatility, hot nights, cold stretches, Jokic's graphs look almost eerily flat, a straight line near excellence. Perhaps the best illustration of that steadiness came during the 2023 playoffs. Over 20 games, he averaged 30 points, 13.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists on 54% shooting. No player, not even LeBron James at his peak, had ever sustained that combination across a full postseason run. His true shooting percentage stayed near 70%, even under the relentless pressure of double teams and playoff defenses designed entirely around stopping him. It's the statistical version of walking a tightrope without trembling.
Even beyond the raw brilliance lies the subtlety of what statisticians call usage efficiency, how productive a player is relative to how often he holds the ball. Jokic's usage rate, around 28% during those seasons, is modest for a superstar. Yet, he produces offense for nearly every teammate on the floor. In analytics terms, he creates hockey assists, the pass that leads to the pass, at a league-leading rate. Numbers can't always quantify rhythm, but they can recognize cause and effect. And the effect of Jokić touching the ball is measurable. Denver's offensive rating spikes by double digits whenever he's on the court. Even defensively, a side of his game critics once questioned, the numbers have turned. Metrics like defensive win shares and contested rebounds percentage show consistent top-tier performance. He's not a shot blocker in the traditional sense, but he guards space, sealing passing lanes, predicting movement, and ending possessions before they begin. Like everything else about him, his defense is cerebral rather than explosive. The breadth of his statistical profile invites comparisons not just to players, but to systems. For Denver, Jokić is the system. Their offensive efficiency when he plays rivals the best teams in history. Their turnover rate plummets because his presence organizes chaos. Their shooting percentages climb because he generates clean looks. The data forms an ecosystem of evidence. When the ball flows through him, basketball makes more sense. Yet even as analysts drown in superlatives, Jokić remains curiously indifferent. Ask him about breaking a record and he shrugs. "They give you ball, you play," he once said. That unpretentiousness adds another layer to his legend, the idea that the sport's most efficient player might also be its most unaffected. In an age defined by pace and space, by analytics dictating where shots should come from, Jokić embodies analytics made human. He doesn't chase the efficient shot, he creates it. The mid-range floater that coaches once discouraged has become one of the most reliable weapons in basketball precisely because of his touch. His shot chart looks like a mosaic, dots scattered from rim to three-point line, each representing judgment rather than formula. Even time bends around his statistics. The game moves slower when he's involved, yet possessions end faster. His average time of possession per touch is one of the shortest among high-usage players, meaning he decides instantly. Numbers confirm what the eye feels. He eliminates indecision. The deeper analysts dive, the more paradoxes they find. He leads centers in assists per game, while committing fewer turnovers than most point guards. He scores more efficiently than shooters who attempt half as many contested looks. He grabs more defensive rebounds while running fewer sprints. It's as if he discovered a hidden algorithm for effort, doing more by doing less.
These statistical marvels carry a deeper implication. They shift how the league evaluates talent. Scouts once measured athleticism by vertical leap. Now they study processing speed. Teams once built around volume scorers. Now they search for playmaking bigs. The Jokić template, vision first, ego last, has become the quiet revolution shaping draft boards worldwide. And still, the story of his numbers isn't finished. Each season adds a new layer, another 50-point night built on touch rather than power, another triple-double recorded with no wasted motion. He's already surpassed legends in some statistical columns, yet he continues to treat the game like a daily craft, not a chase for immortality. Perhaps that's the most astonishing statistic of all, the ratio between achievement and ego. 3 MVPs, a Finals MVP, historical efficiency, yet his defining trait remains serenity. In a sport obsessed with measurement, Nikola Jokic's numbers remind us that greatness can be counted, but its calm can't. For all the records, for all the trophies and history rewritten, there's still a strange dissonance that follows Nikola Jokic's name, a quiet undercurrent of underrating. Even after 3 MVPs and a championship, the idea lingers that he's somehow less visible, less magnetic, less marketable than his peers. It's a paradox that says as much about the culture of sports as it does about the man himself.
Part of it begins with how he entered the league. Pick number 41, a second-round selection. That number clings to his legend like a ghost, both a badge of honor and a reminder of the system that failed to see him. The NBA draft is designed to celebrate spectacle, wingspan measurements, athletic testing, hype videos. Jokić offered none of that. He was a teenager from a small Serbian town, soft-spoken, slightly overweight, with a game built on timing rather than explosiveness. Scouts saw limited upside. They missed the most valuable skill of all, awareness. That underestimation didn't vanish when he arrived in the NBA. It just evolved. For years, fans described him with caveats. Surprisingly good passer, deceptively agile, unusually effective. Each phrase carried the faint echo of disbelief, as if brilliance from someone who didn't fit the mold must always be qualified. Jokić wasn't packaged for stardom. No flashy tattoos, no entourage, no social media monologues. Just a man who played, smiled, and went home. In a league where charisma often amplifies reputation, Jokic's humility works against him.
He doesn't chase endorsement deals, doesn't script his persona. Reporters sometimes struggle to extract headlines from him because he simply doesn't care to provide them. After all, what can you sensationalize about a superstar who insists basketball is not the most important thing in life? His disinterest in spectacle diffuses the myth-making machine that fuels sports narratives.
There's also a deeper cultural layer. The NBA has long celebrated athletic drama, the soaring dunk, the chase-down block, the emotion caught on camera. Jokic's game doesn't fit that grammar. His highlights don't explode, they unfold. The passes are soft, the movements deliberate, the celebrations non-existent. It's brilliance that asks to be watched twice. And in a fast-scroll media age, subtlety often gets lost between swipes. Even the language of commentary favors flash. Words like dominant, explosive, and ferocious imply violence, not vision. Jokic's genius is none of those things. It's patient, unhurried, reflective. When you describe a player like him accurately, calm, methodical, intelligent, it sounds like faint praise, not worship. And yet, those traits are precisely what make him transcendent. Media geography plays its part too. Denver isn't Los Angeles, or New York, or Miami. It's high altitude, low noise. The Nuggets have no dynasty history, no celebrity legacy. For years, national broadcasts overlooked them, choosing marquee matchups on bigger stages. Jokic's rise didn't happen under Broadway lights. It happened in quiet arenas, in the mountain air, away from the constant buzz of the national spotlight. That distance shielded him and obscured him. Even after his first MVP, some narratives remained skeptical. The criticism was rarely about performance. It was about perception. Commentators would ask whether he looked like an MVP, a coded question wrapped in aesthetics. What they meant was, should the best player in the world really look so ordinary? No sculpted frame, no signature scowl, no sound bites designed for virality. Just a round-faced, self-effacing giant who jogged more than he sprinted and smiled more than he roared. And yet, that ordinariness is part of what makes him extraordinary. Jokić redefines the myth of greatness. He proves that mastery doesn't have to be loud, that dominance can be quiet. But that redefinition takes time to sink in. Fans are conditioned to measure greatness by impact we can feel, the dunk that shakes the camera, the flex that sends a message. Jokic's impact works differently. You don't feel it all at once. You realize it afterward, when you glance at the box score and see he's orchestrated another masterpiece, almost invisibly. There's also a global bias worth mentioning. International players have long had to overachieve to be recognized equally. Dirk Nowitzki, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Luka Dončić all experienced it, the sense that they had to prove their style could coexist with the American basketball mythos. Jokić faces a subtler version of that. His game is European in philosophy, collective, cerebral, symphonic. It prioritizes connection over isolation. In a league built on individual highlight reels, his selflessness can appear understated, even anonymous. Then there's the matter of expression. In sports culture, emotion equals engagement. Players who scream, taunt, or celebrate
become fixtures in highlight reels. Jokić rarely does any of that. His emotional range oscillates between amusement and mild irritation. When he hits a game winner, he doesn't pound his chest, he just jogs back like nothing happened. To some, that reads as apathy, but to those who understand, it's serenity, the mark of a man unshaken by success or failure. Even endorsements of his greatness often arrive wrapped in disbelief. When analysts call him the best passing big man ever, it still sounds like a qualifier, as if to say he's the best of his kind, not the best, period. But watch closely, and you see something rarer. He's not just passing for a big man, he's passing better than almost anyone who's ever touched a basketball. His assist totals don't just rival point guards, they surpass many. The distinction isn't positional anymore, it's philosophical. Fans, too, play a role in this undervaluation. Greatness that feels effortless sometimes feels unearned. We're wired to equate sweat with struggle, visible effort with value. Jokić doesn't play visibly hard. No grimaces, no gasps for air, no theatrical exhaustion. He plays efficiently, almost peacefully. To some, that seems less heroic, but to those who watch closely, it's the highest form of control. Mastery so complete that strain disappears. And yet, this overlooked label also gives his story its soul, because every time Jokić wins, every triple-double, every MVP, every unassuming shrug, it's a quiet correction to that bias. He doesn't demand validation, he earns it until disbelief becomes admiration. Slowly, the narrative bends. Commentators who once called him unathletic now use words like inevitable. Fans who once skipped Denver games now tune in to watch the orchestra play. In some ways, being overlooked has protected him. Without constant noise, his focus has stayed pure. Without the cult of celebrity, his joy for the game has remained intact. He still shows up early, stretches, warms up with bounce passes, jokes with teammates, and plays with the same equanimity he had in Sombor. His detachment from hype might be the very reason he's endured it.
And perhaps that's the lesson hidden in the paradox. To be overlooked is not always to be unseen. Sometimes it means existing beyond the reach of distortion, performing excellence so quietly that it can't be corrupted by expectation. Jokić doesn't fight for his narrative, he simply lives it, one game at a time, until perception catches up to truth. So when fans or analysts still wonder why Nikola Jokić doesn't command the global attention his accolades deserve, maybe the answer is simple. Because his greatness isn't designed for spectacle, it's designed for understanding. To appreciate him, you have to slow down. You have to watch the small things, the flick of a wrist that creates a layup, the glance that anticipates a cut, the pause before inevitability. He may never fit the mold of the NBA's ideal superstar. He may never dominate headlines the way he dominates box scores. But maybe that's precisely why his story endures. Because it reminds us that greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it passes instead of shoots. Sometimes it wears a calm smile and a soft voice and lets the game speak. In the end, being overlooked isn't a flaw in Jokic's legacy.
It's its heartbeat. Every accolade he earns redefines what visibility means. Pick 41 was overlooked once. The league may have looked past him, but now when the ball finds his hands, when the arena holds its breath, when the pass threads through the air as if guided by unseen lines, no one's looking past him anymore. They're watching, quietly, finally, with the awe he always deserved.
Every generation of basketball has its emblem, a figure who doesn't just win, but changes the way the game feels. Jordan gave it dominance. Kobe gave it obsession. LeBron gave it omnipresence. And now, Nikola Jokić has given it serenity. His legacy isn't built on noise or image. It's built on balance. The idea that intelligence and patience can be every bit as transformative as athleticism and flair. As his career enters its second decade, that balance defines him as much as any statistic. The numbers tell one story: 3 MVPs, a Finals MVP, a championship, historic efficiency. But legacy lives beyond the box score. It's measured in influence, in how others begin to imitate the previously unimaginable. And in that sense, Jokic's mark is already visible everywhere. Young centers around the world, in Serbia, in Spain, in high schools across the US, now practice bounce passes and one-legged fadeaways instead of just dunks. Coaches at every level encourage their big men to initiate offense, to read the floor, to think the game instead of just surviving it. That shift, subtle but seismic, is the Jokić effect. Before him, the center position had been divided into 2 archetypes: the rim protector and the post scorer. Now there's a third, the orchestrator, the point center, the player who blurs positional boundaries and makes the court feel fluid again. When a 7-footer like Victor Wembanyama or Alperen Şengün threads a no-look pass, the echoes are unimaginable. The league has expanded its imagination because Jokić proved that basketball's geometry still had new shapes to discover.
And yet, his influence reaches beyond tactics. It's philosophical. Jokić embodies the unlearning of ego that elite sports so rarely permit. He's the antithesis of the me-first highlight culture. Every decision he makes serves the collective. Every possession reminds his teammates and his audience that beauty in basketball isn't born from isolation, but from interaction. That's part of what makes him such a compelling figure for this era. In a time when attention is the ultimate currency, Jokić refuses to trade in it. He doesn't post his workouts, doesn't script narratives, doesn't care about the endless churn of comparison that dominates modern sports media. His indifference isn't apathy, it's perspective. He plays, wins, and then returns home to a life unaltered by fame. That steadiness feels almost revolutionary. But the question every great player eventually faces is legacy. What will remain when the cheers fade? For Jokić, it might not be a highlight reel. It'll be a philosophy, the idea that the game can be mastered through understanding rather than domination, that calm can be a weapon, that greatness doesn't need to demand attention to deserve it. As for his future, the canvas remains wide open. At only 30 years old, he's entering the stage of a career where experience and comfort often converge into sustained excellence. He's already the Nuggets' all-time leader in numerous categories: assists, rebounds, player efficiency, and likely has years of prime left. Realistically, if he maintains even 80% of his current pace, he could end his career among the top 20 players in NBA history by every measurable metric.
But numbers alone can't define his trajectory. The deeper story lies in how he adapts. His game, so rooted in feel and timing, should age gracefully. It doesn't rely on athleticism that fades. It relies on perception that sharpens. Like Tim Duncan before him, Jokic's legacy may expand long after his physical peak, evolving into a kind of basketball wisdom. Fewer minutes, same mastery. And when the day comes that he retires, perhaps earlier than expected, perhaps quietly, perhaps with no farewell tour, he'll likely walk away without ceremony, maybe back to Sombor, maybe to the horses and the silence, maybe to mornings unburdened by schedules. He'll leave behind not just trophies, but an idea of how to live amid greatness without being consumed by it. Still, even his humility can't mask what he's already done. For Denver, he's more than a superstar. He's a symbol of what small markets can achieve when patience meets belief. The Nuggets didn't chase free agents or trade their way into contention. They built around a 41st pick, a slow-burning genius, and trusted in continuity. That approach, unglamorous but organic, paid off with a championship and a model for every franchise seeking substance over spectacle. Internationally, his legacy carries another weight. Alongside Dirk, Giannis, and Luka, Jokić represents a global wave that's permanently reshaped the NBA's identity. The league is no longer America's game exported. It's a shared language, spoken differently across continents. And Jokic's dialect is the quietest, most elegant form of fluency. His success reinforces the genius knows no passport, and that the next generation of stars can come from any gym, any town, any forgotten draft slot. There's poetry, too, in how his story reframes what it means to be valuable. The MVP, most valuable player, is often interpreted through dominance. Who scores the most, who commands the most attention, who creates the most noise. Jokić forces a different definition. Value, in his world, is connection. It's making everyone better. It's the unseen work between the seams of the game. His MVPs are testaments to the invisible, the glance, the pause, the read that turns 5 individuals into one organism. In that sense, his legacy might outlast even the records, because what he's truly changed is how the game feels when it's played the right way. Watch a Nuggets possession when he's on the floor. The ball moves, players cut, defenders hesitate. There's rhythm without rush, purpose without panic. It's not dominance in the conventional sense, it's harmony. And once you've seen that kind of basketball, the older, ego-driven versions feel smaller by comparison. What makes his story almost mythic is its accessibility. There's no superhero origin here, no divine athletic gifts, just a boy from a small town who loved passing more than scoring, who never tried to be more than himself and somehow became the most complete player on earth. His success suggests that greatness might be simpler than we imagine, not a quest for transformation, but an act of refinement.
And as his legend grows, so does the symbolism of that humble draft number, 41. It's more than trivia now. It's metaphor. 40 names were called before his, each one chosen under the illusion that greatness has a look, a mold, a measurable trait. Jokić proved that the things which truly matter, perception, patience, perspective, don't fit on a scouting report. That number now stands for every overlooked talent, every quiet dream, every player told they're too slow, too soft, too different. In the future, when historians trace the lineage of basketball's greats, they'll see how Jokić bridged eras. He's the connective tissue between the old world of structure and the new world of creativity, between analog and algorithm, between the chaos of highlight culture and the calm of craft. His legacy won't be just that he dominated. It'll be that he reminded the sport what it could be when played selflessly. And perhaps that's the truest measure of influence, when your presence changes not just outcomes, but perspectives. So, what does the future hold? More wins, more records, perhaps more trophies. But if you listen to him, you sense that none of that defines the horizon. The horses, the quiet mornings, the family dinners, those are his trophies too. And in a strange, grounding way, that balance makes his basketball even purer, because when the game stops being everything, it can finally become art.
In time, Nikola Jokic's name will sit comfortably alongside the game's immortals, but his legacy will stand slightly apart. Less thunder, more resonance. A reminder that sometimes the greatest revolution doesn't come from breaking the game, but from understanding it completely. And maybe that's how the story of Pick 41 ends. Not with a roar, but with a knowing smile. A player who turned being overlooked into a philosophy. A champion who found peace in patience. A master who taught the game how to breathe again. In the end, the story of Nikola Jokić is not one of conquest, but of comprehension. His greatness doesn't roar, it resonates. He never forced the game to bend to him. He simply understood it so completely that it bent on its own. That understanding, that effortless fluency, is what makes him feel timeless. From the quiet barns of Sombor to the roaring arenas of the NBA, his journey carries a singular through line: balance. Every step, every pass, every word reflects a man at peace with both his gift and his limits. Where others chase legacy, he chases clarity. Where others perform, he refines. The game doesn't consume him, it expresses him. What began as a curiosity, a second-round pick with a soft touch and a strange rhythm, became the heartbeat of an era. His MVP seasons, his championship run, his triple-doubles, his calm amid chaos. Together, they form a new definition of dominance. Not dominance through force, but through understanding.
the kind that looks effortless only because it's so complete.
And yet, for all the numbers, all the accolades, what lingers most about Jokić isn't statistical, it's emotional. Watching him play feels soothing. The chaos of the sport slows, the noise fades, and for a few moments, everything aligns. It's basketball distilled to its simplest truth: connection. Pass to movement, movement to rhythm, rhythm to meaning. He makes you remember why people fell in love with the game in the first place, not for the spectacle, but for the synchronicity. That's why his story matters beyond sport. In a culture obsessed with speed and spectacle, Jokić represents a quieter ideal, the value of patience, of consistency, of doing one thing so well it becomes art. He reminds us that greatness doesn't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes it whispers, steady, confident, unbothered by applause. He's proven that being overlooked isn't the same as being unseen. The world eventually caught up. Pick 41 became a champion, a 3-time MVP, a global example of how intelligence and humility can coexist with brilliance. The game that once underestimated him now orbits around him. And yet, if you asked him, he'd probably shrug. "I'm just playing basketball," he'd say. And maybe that's the beauty of it, that simplicity. The same kid from Sombor, still finding joy in the spin of a ball, the arc of a pass, the small, perfect moment where vision meets motion.
Years from now, when his name joins the pantheon of legends, people will remember more than his trophies. They'll remember how he made the game feel calm, fluid, inevitable. They'll remember how he turned teamwork into poetry, and they'll remember how he showed that greatness, real greatness, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just works, patiently, perfectly, over time. So if you ever find yourself doubting the value of the quiet path, think of Nikola Jokić, the boy from Sombor, the 41st pick, the overlooked MVP, the man who built a dynasty on grace, the player who turned patience into power, the reminder that even in a game built on noise, the softest sound can echo the longest. And as we close this journey from draft night to destiny, take a breath, let the rhythm slow, and remember, sometimes the truest greatness doesn't need to be seen first. It only needs to be seen clearly. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep, relaxing dives into the legends of sport and the hidden meaning within the game, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time here on Sleep Hoops. Good night, and as always, may the quiet brilliance of the game stay with you. The city of Ljubljana doesn't roar like New York or Los Angeles. It hums, quiet, steady, rhythmic, a city wrapped in the green of its riverside trees and the soft echoes of church bells over cobbled streets. It's small enough that faces become familiar, but large enough that dreams can stretch beyond its skyline. In one of its neighborhoods, on a small court With fading paint and a rusted rim, a boy named Luka Dončić began to fall in love with basketball. Before the world knew him as a magician with the ball, before the step-backs and triple-doubles and the thunder of NBA arenas, he was just Luka, a kid chasing the sound of bouncing rubber under Slovenian skies. His father, Saša Dončić, was a professional basketball player, tall, strong, and disciplined. His mother, Miriam Poterbin, worked as a model and owned a beauty salon. Together, they created a home where the game and creativity intertwined. Luka grew up watching his father's games, learning how the sport wasn't just about scoring, but about rhythm and timing, about reading what came next before anyone else could see it. There are stories of Luka as a toddler, clutching a basketball almost as big as his body, throwing it toward a hoop barely a few feet off the ground. By 7, he was spending hours at SD Olimpija, one of Slovenia's most respected basketball programs. Coaches remember him as quiet, but endlessly curious, always asking questions, always trying new moves. What made him different wasn't size or speed, it was understanding. Even at an age when most kids played for fun, Luka saw the court like a puzzle he wanted to solve. Ljubljana offered no glamour, no world-class facilities. But maybe that was the secret, the simplicity of those early days. Cracked courts, old shoes, cold mornings sharpened him. The rhythm of daily repetition became his comfort. Every dribble, every shot, every step toward the basket was another beat in the song he was composing, one that would someday play on the biggest stages of the world.
As Luka's passion grew, his father became both teacher and opponent. Saša tested him, pushing him to think rather than react, to make the right pass instead of the flashy one. The two would spend hours in quiet gyms, the sound of sneakers squeaking the only conversation they needed. Those who saw them together said it was like watching a chess match with a basketball, a game of mind and movement. At home, Luka was a mix of shy and mischievous. He played video games, collected sneakers, and sometimes watched NBA highlights deep into the night. But unlike many kids, he didn't just idolize stars. He studied them. He watched LeBron James to learn about physical dominance, Steve Nash for playmaking, Manu Ginobili for creativity, and Kobe Bryant for relentlessness. It wasn't imitation, it was research. Luka wasn't dreaming in vague colors. He was designing his future, detail by detail. By the time he reached his early teens, Luka was already dominating older kids. Coaches often placed him against players 2 or 3 years his senior, and he still controlled games. He didn't rely on athleticism. Instead, he manipulated space, angles, and timing. His court sense seemed otherworldly. Even when the game sped up, he stayed calm, almost detached, like he was watching it unfold from above.
Slovenia had seen talent before. Goran Dragic was already in the NBA, but this felt different. Luka's rise wasn't just about potential. It was about inevitability. The youth coaches whispered it quietly at first. He's special. He sees everything. At just 13, his future took a turn that would change everything. Real Madrid, yes, the same club known worldwide for football, also had a prestigious basketball academy. Scouts had noticed this Slovenian prodigy who could read the floor like a veteran. They came to watch, expecting a skilled kid. They left, calling him a phenomenon. Within months, Real Madrid offered him a chance to join their youth program in Spain. Imagine that moment. A 13-year-old leaving his home, his country, and his language behind. Slovenia is only a few hours from Spain by plane, but emotionally, it might as well have been a different universe. His mother accompanied him at first, supporting his leap into the unknown. His father stayed in Slovenia, continuing his own career. For Luka, it was the first step into the life of a professional, one that demanded maturity far beyond his years. The transition wasn't easy. New city, new culture, new expectations. The Real Madrid training regimen was rigorous. Morning practices, strength work, academic lessons, team meetings. But while some kids might have wilted under pressure, Luka thrived. Coaches were stunned by how quickly he adapted. He picked up Spanish within months and soon began understanding the subtle communication on the court, the unspoken language of eyes, gestures, and rhythm that defines elite basketball.
Even as a teenager, he didn't play like one. His decisions were sharp, his passing instinctive, his composure rare. He made mistakes, but he learned from each one. It wasn't long before his teammates, many older, began trusting him to take the ball in crucial moments. It was the same quiet confidence that had guided him in Ljubljana, now set against the bright lights of Madrid. But before those European championships, before the MVP trophies and draft day cameras, there was still that boy from Slovenia who just wanted to play. The same kid who would stay late after practice, shooting free throws alone, counting the makes out loud. The same kid who missed home sometimes, but buried that feeling under hours of training. Ljubljana had given Luka his roots, humility, patience, and imagination. It was where he learned that greatness doesn't begin under spotlights. It begins in silence, where the air is cold and the only sound is the bounce of a ball echoing off the gym walls. And as he would later say in interviews, Slovenia will always be my home. That's where everything started. In that sense, the story of Luka Dončić isn't just about talent. It's about courage, the courage to leave, to grow, and to trust that what he learned on those small courts could one day carry him into the biggest arenas in the world. From the foggy mornings of Ljubljana to the gleaming hardwood of Real Madrid's training halls, the foundation had been laid. Luka had learned how to see the game in its purest form. He had learned how to outthink, not just outplay. He didn't know it yet, but every pass, every hesitation, every slow step and sudden burst was leading him toward a destiny that would make him the face of a new era, a European prodigy ready to conquer the NBA. Madrid was a world away from Ljubljana. The air was drier, the days longer, the lights brighter. At 13 years old, Luka Dončić arrived in Spain with a duffel bag, a dream, and the quiet determination of someone who had already decided what he was going to become. Real Madrid was no ordinary basketball academy. It was a machine built to produce champions. Its youth program trained athletes with the same discipline and expectation as its legendary football club. Here, talent wasn't enough. Every day demanded proof of endurance, adaptability, and will. For Luka, It was like stepping into a laboratory of greatness.
At first, he was just another name on the roster, a foreign kid with raw skill. He didn't speak the language fluently, didn't know the routines, didn't have friends yet. The other players were older, stronger, more experienced, but they quickly realized something was different about this Slovenian teenager. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't overwhelmed. He just understood the game. From the moment he stepped on the court, Luka saw plays developing 2 or 3 steps ahead. He moved at his own tempo, refusing to be rushed by defenders. Coaches would later say it was as if time slowed down for him. That instinct, that patience, it was already there. The kind of composure most players only develop in their late 20s lived inside a boy barely in his teens. Real Madrid's coaches began to move him up through the ranks quickly. Within 2 years, Luka was playing against opponents 5 or 6 years older and winning. His performances in the youth leagues drew attention not just from Spanish scouts, but from across Europe. In 2015, at only 16, Luka Dončić made his debut for Real Madrid's senior team, becoming the youngest player ever to wear the iconic white uniform in the modern era. Imagine that moment, 16 years old, walking into a professional locker room filled with grown men, veterans who had played in the EuroLeague and international tournaments. And yet, when Luka stepped onto the floor, he didn't shrink. He didn't defer. He played as though he belonged. His first few games were short stints, a few minutes here, a few possessions there. But every time he touched the ball, the rhythm of the game shifted. He wasn't just playing basketball. He was conducting it. Over the next few seasons, Luka's evolution was breathtaking. By 17, he was already one of the best young players in Europe. His confidence never felt arrogant. It was natural, almost quiet. His game spoke for him. The crafty footwork, the no-look passes, the deep step-back threes that would become his signature. The European style suited him perfectly. It was cerebral, strategic, and deeply technical. He learned from European legends like Sergio Llull and Rudy Fernandez, veterans who helped shape his understanding of leadership and professionalism. They taught him how to handle pressure, how to stay composed when the crowd roared and the stakes climbed. Luka absorbed everything from how to prepare before games to how to recover after tough losses. His rise wasn't just about scoring or highlight plays. It was about control. In Europe, games are shorter, possessions more valuable, spacing tighter. Luka learned how to manipulate defenses with angles, how to punish mistakes with precision. He became fluent in the subtleties of the sport, when to attack, when to pause, when to let others shine. And as he grew in skill, he also grew in stature. By 2017, he was averaging over 20 minutes per game in the EuroLeague, the second highest level of professional basketball in the world. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving.
Then came 2018, the year that would turn Luka Dončić from a prodigy into a legend. That season, Real Madrid was one of the most formidable teams in Europe, but their strength ran through their teenage star. Luka dominated games against opponents nearly twice his age. His vision was extraordinary. He'd throw passes from impossible angles, find shooters before the defense even rotated, and create scoring chances out of nothing. At 19, Luka Dončić led Real Madrid to the EuroLeague Championship, the most prestigious title in European club basketball. He didn't just play a role, he was the centerpiece. That same year, he was named both EuroLeague MVP and Final Four MVP, becoming the youngest player ever to win those honors. Think about that for a moment. A teenager, still not old enough to legally drink in most countries, standing atop the most competitive basketball league outside the NBA. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Europe had produced something extraordinary. When reporters asked him about the pressure, Luka smiled and shrugged. "Basketball is basketball," he said, "no matter where you play." That humility masked an unshakable confidence. He didn't see borders in basketball, only opportunities. His final year in Madrid became a highlight reel of brilliance. Game winners, dazzling passes, and moments of pure audacity filled the season. Every time Real Madrid needed a spark, Luka provided it. And when he finally announced he was declaring for the 2018 NBA draft, Europe collectively held its breath. For the fans who had watched him grow since he was 13, it felt like sending a child off to a new world. For the coaches who had guided him, it was validation, proof that the European system could produce not just solid professionals, but transcendent stars. But beyond the trophies and accolades, what defined Luka's time in Madrid was something quieter. The discipline he built, the 6 a.m. practices, the language barriers he overcame, the injuries he played through, the long flights, the homesickness, all of it carved him into someone ready for anything. He had left home as a boy and now stood as a young man who had conquered Europe. His confidence wasn't born of arrogance, but of proof. Years of playing, winning, adapting. And while the NBA was a dream for many, Luka's perspective was different. For him, the NBA wasn't the dream, it was the next step. He had already proven he could dominate against men. Now, he wanted to see how his game would translate against the very best in the world. Before he left Spain, Real Madrid honored him with a ceremony. Teammates hugged him, coaches gave him their blessings, and fans chanted his name. He thanked them all, in Spanish, and reminded them that Madrid would always be part of his story. The prodigy from Slovenia had become a European champion, but he wasn't finished. What awaited him across the ocean wasn't just another league, it was the crucible where legends were forged. A place where every night meant facing the world's best athletes, the strongest defenders, the loudest crowds. Luka Dončić was ready, and as his flight lifted off toward America, carrying with it the weight of expectations from 2 continents, he looked out the window and smiled, because deep down he knew something that few others did. He wasn't going there to learn, he was going there to conquer. Before Luka Dončić set foot on an NBA court, he had already experienced something that many basketball legends never would: the weight and wonder of carrying an entire nation's hope on his back. Slovenia, a small country tucked between Italy, Austria, Croatia, and Hungary, is home to just over 2 million people. In global basketball terms, it's a dot on the map, but in 2017, That dot lit up brighter than almost any other place on Earth.
The stage was Eurobasket 2017, the premier continental tournament where Europe's best national teams compete. A crucible of pride, strategy, and survival. For Slovenia, it was a chance not just to compete, but to define itself. And in the middle of it all stood a teenager who played with the composure of a veteran and the fire of someone who had waited his entire life for this moment. Luka Dončić was just 18. Most players his age were still in college, dreaming about professional basketball. Luka was wearing his country's colors and facing some of the best players in the world. But he wasn't alone. Beside him was Slovenia's established hero, Goran Dragić, a veteran point guard who had carved out a successful NBA career. Their bond became the heartbeat of that Slovenian team, one generation guiding another. Dragić was the mentor, Luka the prodigy. Together, they were poetry on the court. From the first game, Slovenia looked different. The chemistry was instant. Luka played with joy, that childlike energy that made basketball feel like storytelling. He would drive to the rim, hesitate just enough to draw defenders, then slip a pass between bodies no one else even saw. Dragić would feed off that rhythm, slicing through defenses, scoring with grace and fury. But what really set them apart was belief. Luka didn't care about rankings or reputations. To him, there was no underdog. There was only basketball, and he knew how to play it better than most.
Through the group stage, Slovenia stayed perfect. They defeated heavyweights like France and Greece, teams loaded with NBA stars and EuroLeague veterans. Luka was everywhere, rebounding over taller players, orchestrating offense, diving on the floor for loose balls. He played like someone possessed, not by ego, but by purpose. By the time Slovenia reached the semifinals, Europe had taken notice. The commentators marveled at how an 18-year-old could control a game with such poise. Coaches adjusted entire defensive schemes just to slow him down, and failed. Then came one of the most iconic moments in Slovenian sports history, the semi-final against Spain, the defending champions, a dynasty with names like Pau Gasol, Marc Gasol, and Sergio Rodriguez. Spain was expected to win. They almost always did, but Slovenia, fueled by Luka and Dragić, refused to bow. Luka played fearless, hitting deep threes, threading impossible assists, and talking to teammates with the calm assurance of a leader twice his age. Dragic's experience and Luka's vision meshed perfectly, like two sides of the same coin. Slovenia dismantled Spain with precision, rhythm, and unrelenting spirit. It wasn't an upset. It was a statement. When the final buzzer sounded, Luka lifted his arms, smiled toward the crowd, and hugged Dragić. He had just helped take Slovenia to its first ever Eurobasket final.
The championship game would be against Serbia, a basketball powerhouse with its own rich tradition and physical style. But even in the build-up, Luka's focus never wavered. He wasn't thinking about fame or NBA scouts. He wanted to win for Slovenia, for the people who had watched him grow, for the courts of Ljubljana, and for every kid who dared to believe that greatness could come from small places. The final was fierce. The tension inside Istanbul's Sinan Erdem Dome was electric. Thousands of fans waving flags, chanting, living each possession. Slovenia started strong, with Dragić playing the game of his life, scoring relentlessly. Luka, meanwhile, controlled tempo and distributed the ball with surgical precision. Then, in the third quarter, disaster struck. Luka landed awkwardly after a rebound and twisted his ankle. He grimaced, tried to walk it off, but the pain was too much. The coaching staff took him out. On the bench, tears filled his eyes, not from the injury, but from the thought that he might not be able to finish what he started. Jokić walked over, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered something. No one knows exactly what he said, but Luka nodded, wiping his face. He cheered louder than anyone for his teammates, standing whenever the pain allowed. With their young star sidelined, Jokić took over completely, scoring 35 points, a heroic performance that etched his name in history. Slovenia held off Serbia in a dramatic finish to win the Eurobasket 2017 championship, the nation's first ever gold medal.
As confetti rained down, Luka limped onto the court. Jokić, who had just been named the tournament's MVP, immediately pulled him into an embrace. The image became iconic. The mentor and the prodigy, arms around each other, tears mixing with smiles. That moment transcended basketball. It was about pride, unity, and legacy. For a country as small as Slovenia, this victory meant everything. And for Luka Dončić, it meant the world was finally watching. He wasn't just a European prospect anymore. He was a proven winner, a player who could lead, adapt, and shine under the brightest lights. When the Slovenian team returned home, tens of thousands of fans filled the streets of Ljubljana to welcome them. Luka stood on the stage, microphone in hand, and looked out over the sea of flags. He was still just 18, barely an adult, yet already a national hero. He thanked his teammates, his coaches, his family, and his country. His voice cracked when he mentioned Jokić, calling him a brother forever. For Luka, the Eurobasket wasn't just a medal. It was validation, proof that his path from Slovenia to Madrid had meaning beyond personal glory. It showed him that basketball could unify a country, that it could make people forget divisions and believe in something bigger.
Years later, when asked about that tournament, Luka would often say it was one of the proudest moments of his life, not because of the trophy, but because of what it represented. He had dreamed as a child of making Slovenia proud, and he had done exactly that. The experience also gave him something else, an understanding of pressure. He had faced the best in Europe, handled expectations, and delivered. The NBA would bring bigger crowds, tougher defenders, and harsher critics, but none of that scared him anymore. After Eurobasket, he went back to Madrid for one last season before declaring for the draft. But something had changed. He wasn't playing to prove himself anymore. He was playing to prepare himself for the next mountain to climb. When the time came to cross the Atlantic, Luka carried more than a suitcase. He carried the spirit of a nation that had watched its son grow into a champion. The boy from Ljubljana had conquered Europe. Now he was ready for the world. Draft night, the moment every young basketball player dreams of. The flashing cameras, the roaring crowd, the tension that hums like electricity through the room. For Luka Dončić, this wasn't just about entering the NBA. It was about stepping onto a global stage that had been waiting for him long before the lights came on.
By 2018, Luka was already a legend in Europe, a EuroLeague champion, MVP, and Slovenian hero. Scouts had followed him for years, intrigued by his poise, skill, and maturity. But in the U.S., skepticism lingered. The narrative around European players hadn't fully changed yet. Many still believed that European stars struggled to adapt to the NBA's speed, physicality, and individualism. Luka heard it all. The doubts about his athleticism, the questions about whether his success overseas would translate, but he didn't waste time responding. He let the ball do the talking. When the 2018 NBA draft arrived, Luka walked into the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, wearing a navy blue suit and an expression that was part calm, part anticipation. His mother sat beside him, proud, radiant, emotional. His name had echoed across continents, and now it was about to echo across the world. The first pick was DeAndre Ayton, selected by the Phoenix Suns. Then Marvin Bagley III went second to the Sacramento Kings. The third pick came, and Luka Dončic's name was called by the Atlanta Hawks. But within minutes, the trade news broke. Luka was being sent to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for another young prospect, Trae Young, and a future draft pick. The trade was agreed upon before the draft even started, a deal orchestrated by Mavericks owner Mark Cuban, general manager Donnie Nelson, and head coach Rick Carlisle. Dallas had been searching for a new cornerstone since Dirk Nowitzki, the German legend, was nearing retirement. They saw something in Luka, a bridge between eras, a European successor to a European icon.
When Luka put on the blue Mavericks cap for the first time, it felt symbolic. The European torch was being passed from Dirk to Luka, from one continent to another, from one story of greatness to the next. His arrival in Dallas came with fanfare and curiosity. The Mavericks organization welcomed him like family. Dirk, soft-spoken and humble as ever, immediately took Luka under his wing. "He's got it," Dirk told reporters during training camp. "You can just tell." But the NBA was different. The pace was relentless, the athletes faster, the schedule brutal. Luka's first few games were a blur. Crowded defenses, transition speed, and physical defenders who tried to test the rookie early. Yet even through the chaos, there were glimpses of brilliance. In one of his first games, Luka hit a deep step-back three, smooth, effortless, confident. The crowd gasped. The commentators chuckled. They'd seen that move before in Europe, but to see it against NBA defenders? It was a sign of things to come. He wasn't intimidated. If anything, he seemed amused by the challenge. Through his first months in the league, Luka's confidence only grew. He adjusted quickly to NBA spacing, learned the defensive tendencies of his opponents, and developed chemistry with his teammates. What stood out most wasn't just his scoring, it was his vision. He threaded passes through gaps no one else saw, turning ordinary possessions into highlights.
By mid-season, he had already established himself as the clear frontrunner for Rookie of the Year. He wasn't just putting up stats, he was controlling games. The Mavericks, though still rebuilding, played with renewed energy whenever he was on the floor. His leadership, unusual for a teenager, was palpable. Opponents tried to rattle him. Trash talk, physical play,
mind games. But Luka had been battling grown men in Europe since he was 16. Nothing fazed him. When veteran defenders tried to bully him, he'd respond with a smirk and a step-back jumper. When crowds booed him, he'd silence them with a no-look assist. Night after night, he collected triple-doubles, becoming one of the youngest players in NBA history to do so. His stats were staggering for a rookie: over 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. But numbers told only part of the story. Luka brought something intangible: joy. He played with creativity, flair, and emotion, all while maintaining control. He'd celebrate big shots with a wink, a grin, or a playful gesture to the crowd. Fans loved it. Dallas had found its new heartbeat.
As the season went on, it became clear that Luka wasn't just a good player. He was a franchise changer. His basketball IQ was off the charts, and his ability to dictate pace made him a nightmare for defenses. He could slow the game to his rhythm, bend it to his will, and make even the toughest plays look effortless. When the season ended, there was no debate. Luka Dončić was named the 2019 NBA Rookie of the Year. The kid from Slovenia had arrived, and he had conquered his first mountain. During his acceptance speech, he thanked his family, teammates, and fans. His voice wavered slightly when he mentioned Dirk, calling him the greatest example of how to carry oneself as both a player and a person. Dirk, sitting in the audience, smiled proudly. Behind the award and the applause, Luka's first year revealed something deeper. It wasn't just his skill that impressed, it was his composure. Every night he faced a new test: faster opponents, louder arenas, heavier expectations, and every night he met them with calm precision. There were growing pains, of course, moments where his turnovers piled up, where his conditioning came into question, where defenses swarmed him. But he adapted. He learned. His basketball mind was a sponge, and every game became a lesson in mastery.
By the end of that first season, the Mavericks knew what they had. Not just a star, but a cornerstone. Luka wasn't a project or a gamble. He was the real thing, a player who could carry a franchise for years. In the locker room after his Rookie of the Year win, someone asked him what was next. Luka smiled that familiar half-grin and said, "More work, more wins." Simple, direct, confident. The European prodigy had crossed the ocean and silenced every doubt. And yet, as great as his first year was, it was only the beginning. Luka wasn't satisfied with accolades or comparisons. He wanted something bigger, not just to play in the NBA, but to dominate it. He had conquered Europe. He had conquered the rookie wall. Now he set his sights on the stars. In the quiet of Dallas mornings, before practices began and cameras arrived, Luka Dončić could often be found alone in the gym, hoodie up, headphones on, dribbling through cones, launching shot after shot. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about refining something. He had survived the rookie storm, earned respect, and now he was chasing mastery.
His second season started with a sense of anticipation rarely seen for a player so young. The basketball world had taken notice, not just of his stats,
but of the way he played. Luka didn't look like a traditional superstar. He wasn't the fastest or the most explosive, but he had something rarer. Control. From the opening games of the 2019-2020 season, it was clear Luka had leveled up. His reads were quicker, his step-back three sharper, his confidence unshakable. He began stringing together performances that made even seasoned analysts shake their heads. Triple-double after triple-double, game-winning shots that barely rippled the net, assists that defied logic. He was only 20, but he played with the patience of someone who'd spent decades studying the game. The Mavericks, once uncertain about their direction after Dirk Nowitzki's retirement, suddenly had a new identity, built entirely around Luka. He was the conductor of their offense, dictating every possession with that deceptively slow rhythm that lulled defenders before he'd explode into a drive or rise for a step-back three. That move, the step-back, became his signature. The slow gather, the shift of balance, the flick of the wrist. It was part geometry, part art. Defenders knew it was coming and still couldn't stop it. It wasn't speed that beat them, it was timing. Luka's footwork was a masterpiece of precision, his use of angles a quiet rebellion against the athletic norms of the NBA.
By December 2019, Luka was averaging near a triple-double and had led Dallas to one of the league's best offenses. He was named the Western Conference Player of the Month, the youngest player in Mavericks history to earn the honor. And then came his first All-Star selection, not as a novelty, but as a bona fide starter. Fans voted in millions. He'd gone from an unknown European prospect to one of the league's most beloved players in under 2 years. That season, Luka's game spoke the loudest in moments of chaos. In one unforgettable stretch, he faced LeBron James and the Lakers in Los Angeles. LeBron, the veteran, the icon, the player Luka had once studied on YouTube late at night in Ljubljana, now stood across from him. They traded plays like a passing of eras. LeBron with his power and experience, Luka with his vision and craft. After the game, LeBron smiled when asked about the young star. "He's special," he said. "He's got that thing you can't teach." That thing was what every great had in common, not just talent, but the gravity to bend the game toward themselves. Luka had it. You could feel it every time he touched the ball. Then the pandemic struck. The 2019-2020 season was suspended, later resumed inside the NBA bubble in Orlando. Isolated from fans and the world outside, players faced mental and physical challenges unlike anything before. But Luka seemed unfazed. In the bubble's empty arenas, his game echoed even louder. The cameras captured every call, every breath, every word. And Luka thrived in that eerie silence. The 2020 playoffs brought his first true test. The Los Angeles Clippers, a powerhouse loaded with defenders built to stop stars. But Luka didn't care about reputations. Game 4 of that series became legend. With seconds left in overtime, the Mavericks down by 1, Luka dribbled near midcourt. The clock ticked 4, 3, 2, step back, release. The ball floated through the air like a promise. Swish! Game winner. Series tied. He screamed, fists clenched, adrenaline surging through him. It was the kind of moment that doesn't just define games, it defines careers. In that instant, Luka announced to the world that he wasn't just a future star. He was already one of the best. By the end of his second season, Luka was named to the All-NBA First Team, joining legends who had once defined the sport. At just 21, he had already achieved what most players dream about their entire careers.
But Luka wasn't chasing accolades. What drove him was the thrill of creation, the joy of making something beautiful out of chaos. Watching him play was like watching jazz. Improvisational, fluid, unpredictable, yet somehow perfectly structured. He read defenses like sheet music. When opponents switched, he saw gaps others didn't. When double-teamed, he'd split the coverage with a bounce pass between legs right into a shooter's hands. Every game became a masterclass in tempo. When the Mavericks were down, Luka didn't panic. He slowed the game, controlled possessions, turned momentum like a dial. That ability to manipulate pace and emotion was something coaches couldn't teach. It was instinct. As the seasons continued, the milestones piled up. Youngest player to record a 40-point triple-double. Youngest to average over 28 points. 8 rebounds and 8 assists in a season. Multiple All-NBA selections. Consecutive All-Star appearances. In December 2022, he recorded one of the most absurd stat lines in NBA history. 60 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists in a single game against the New York Knicks. The arena erupted. Even opposing fans stood and applauded. Luka, smiling and gasping for breath, said afterward, "I'm tired as hell." But even then, he looked happy, the kind of exhausted joy that comes from living inside your dream. Beyond the numbers, Luka's personality made him magnetic. He played with swagger, but never malice. He laughed mid-game, joked with referees, celebrated his teammates' successes as if they were his own. There was a playfulness to his dominance, like he was still that kid from Ljubljana, amazed that the game he loved could take him this far. Teammates described him as both competitive and goofy. One moment, he'd be dissecting a defense with surgical focus. The next, he'd be grinning after hitting a deep three, mouthing, "Too easy!" Fans adored him for it. Luka brought joy back to Dallas basketball. Still, greatness demands evolution. As teams adjusted to his brilliance, Luka had to adapt again. He refined his body, improved conditioning, studied film, and learned how to conserve energy while staying lethal. Every summer, he came back sharper. New angles, better reads, subtler tricks. His leadership grew too. Gone was the quiet teenager who deferred to veterans. Now Luka barked out plays, rallied teammates, demanded excellence. His expectations were high because his standards were higher.
By his fourth season, analysts began debating where he stood among the greats. Was he already top 5? Was he on pace to be an MVP? Could he be the one to finally bring another championship to Dallas? The comparisons came fast. Magic Johnson for vision, Larry Bird for poise, Harden for creativity, LeBron for impact. But Luka didn't fit into any mold. He was something new, a hybrid of eras, a player who merged the methodical intelligence of European basketball with the improvisational chaos of the NBA. And as he continued to stack records, one truth became clear. Luka Dončić wasn't just following in Dirk Nowitzki's footsteps. He was carving his own path. He had become the face of a global game, proof that basketball was no longer an American dream, but a universal language. The European prodigy had not only adapted to the NBA, he had reshaped it in his image. The higher you climb, the thinner the air gets. For Luka Dončić, the early years of his NBA rise had felt like flight, unbroken streaks of brilliance, historic records, and the world falling in love with him, effortless genius. But greatness isn't just measured by highlights or awards, it's forged in struggle.
And Luka was about to enter that part of the climb. After his explosive breakout seasons, the question was no longer whether he could dominate, it was whether he could win when it mattered most. Regular season numbers were one thing. The playoffs, where every possession feels like a war, were something else entirely. In 2020 and 2021, the Dallas Mavericks faced the Los Angeles Clippers in back-to-back first-round series. The matchups were almost poetic. Luka, the young savant, against a defensive juggernaut led by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two of the league's premier wing defenders. It was supposed to be a mismatch. Luka was too young, too untested. But if the Clippers were the hunters, they quickly realized Luka was no prey. Game after game, he carved them apart with impossible shot-making, passing, and unrelenting confidence. In one game, he scored 43 points, including a step-back three to seal victory. In another, he nearly single-handedly kept Dallas alive despite double teams, traps, and physical punishment. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He thrived.
The Clippers threw everything at him. Size, schemes, defenders switching constantly. Luka answered with adaptability. When they trapped him, he passed out to open shooters. When they sagged off, he rained threes. When they switched bigs onto him, he toyed with them, dancing into floaters or post fadeaways. Though Dallas ultimately fell short in both series, Luka's legend only grew. He averaged video game numbers, 35 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds per game against one of the most elite defenses in basketball. After each loss, reporters asked how he felt about elimination. He always gave the same kind of answer. Calm, measured, forward-looking. "We'll be back," he'd say. "I hate losing, but we'll be better." It wasn't just words. Behind the scenes, Luka was evolving. The long NBA seasons were taking a toll on his conditioning. Critics pointed to his endurance, that he sometimes faded late in games or appeared winded after long stretches. Luka heard it all, and instead of brushing it aside, he made adjustments.
The following off-seasons saw him refine his diet, training, and focus. He worked with specialized coaches to improve stamina, footwork, and recovery. The goal wasn't to become a sprinter. It was to become efficient, to conserve energy while maintaining dominance. By the 2021-2022 season, those changes began to show. Luka's body looked leaner,
his decision-making sharper. The Mavericks, now led by new head coach Jason Kidd, also shifted around him. Kidd's philosophy emphasized defense and spacing, creating an environment where Luka could maximize his orchestration of the offense. It worked. That season, Luka led Dallas to their best record in over a decade. He missed the start of the 2022 playoffs with a minor calf injury, but when he returned, he was electric. Against the Utah Jazz, he dissected defenses with surgical precision, controlling every game's tempo. Then came the challenge everyone doubted he could overcome: the Phoenix Suns, owners of the league's best record. Phoenix had swagger. They were confident, vocal, and expected to win easily. But Luka relished that. He thrived on disrespect. In Game 7, with the world watching, Luka delivered one of the most dominant playoff performances in recent memory. By halftime, he had 27 points, matching the entire Suns team. He smiled as he jogged back to the bench, whispering to opponents who had taunted him earlier, "Everybody acting tough when they up."
Dallas won in a blowout. Luka finished with 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists, leading the Mavericks to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since the Dirk Nowitzki era. For the city of Dallas, it felt like a rebirth. For Luka, it was vindication. He had learned to balance joy with ruthlessness, to laugh in moments of chaos while delivering daggers. It wasn't arrogance, it was artistry. The Mavericks eventually fell to the Golden State Warriors, the dynasty of the era. But even in defeat, Luka stood tall. He shook hands, smiled, and congratulated his opponents. Then, in the locker room, he told teammates, "We're not done." What made Luka's evolution so profound wasn't just the physical or tactical growth, it was emotional. Early in his career, frustration sometimes got the better of him, arguing with referees, letting missed calls linger in his mind. With experience came perspective. He began focusing his energy on solutions, not reactions. Teammates noticed the difference. They described a calmer, steadier Luka, one who lifted others, cracked jokes in huddles, and led by example. His maturity began matching his talent.
Off the court, Luka also faced the challenge of global stardom. Fame can warp even the most grounded people, but he stayed close to his roots. He still spent off-seasons in Slovenia, surrounded by family and childhood friends. He spoke in interviews about keeping perspective, how no matter the fame, basketball is still just a game. Still, pressure never fully disappears. With each passing year, expectations grew heavier. Fans demanded deep playoff runs, MVP awards, championships. Every loss felt magnified. Every headline became a referendum on his legacy. But Luka didn't chase validation. He chased evolution. He understood that greatness is a process, not a single season, but a story written over years of persistence. He studied film obsessively, picking apart defensive coverages and opponents' habits. His IQ deepened. He began thinking not just about the next play, but the next month, the next year, the next era. The Mavericks roster continued to evolve around him. Trades, signings, coaching adjustments, all designed to support his transcendent playmaking. But through all the shifting pieces, Luka remained the constant, the center of gravity. Every night, no matter the opponent, Dallas had a chance. Because they had Luka. And even when things didn't go perfectly, when shots didn't fall, or the game slipped away, fans could see something in his eyes. Not defeat, determination.
He was learning what every great player eventually learns, that the journey to a championship isn't about perfection, it's about resilience. Each playoff heartbreak hardened him, each critique refined him, each challenge made him more complete. By his mid-20s, Luka Dončić had already achieved what most players dream of: all-star honors, global fame, historic numbers. But the one thing he still wanted most, a championship, continued to elude him. Yet, if his career to that point had shown anything, it was that Luka didn't stay at the same level for long. He grew, relentlessly, intelligently, patiently. The NBA had tested him, pushed him, bruised him, but it had never broken him. And for Luka Dončić, that was never the end of the story. It was just the start of the climb towards something even higher. In every great basketball story, there comes a twist, the kind that shakes the league, divides fans, and redefines careers. For Luka Dončić, that twist came when the unthinkable happened, the trade to the Los Angeles Lakers.
It wasn't just another transaction. It was a seismic shift. After years of carrying Dallas, guiding them through highs and heartbreaks, the relationship between Luka and the Mavericks reached a crossroads. The franchise loved him. He was their beacon, their future. But basketball is a business, and ambition often collides with reality. Dallas had struggled to build a championship-caliber roster around him. Despite Luka's brilliance, playoff exits mounted, frustration simmered, and whispers grew louder. Could he ever win it all without help? Could he become the player his talent demanded if his team couldn't match his drive? Behind closed doors, conversations unfolded. Management weighed options. Luka, loyal yet restless, faced the hardest truth in sports. Sometimes, love for a city isn't enough. Then came the call. The Los Angeles Lakers, a franchise woven into basketball mythology, made an offer too bold to ignore. Multiple players, draft picks, and future assets for one man, Luka Dončić. It was the kind of trade that rewrote narratives before the ink even dried. The Lakers saw Luka not as a risk, but as destiny, the heir to their golden lineage. From Magic Johnson to Kobe Bryant to LeBron James, each generation had its face, its leader, its storyteller. And now the Lakers believed Luka was next.
When the news broke, the basketball world exploded. Analysts called it shocking. Fans debated endlessly, and social media lit up with disbelief and excitement. In Dallas, there was heartbreak. In Los Angeles, there was celebration. Luka's plane landed at LAX under the golden California sun, cameras flashing, reporters waiting. As he stepped off, he wore a simple black hoodie, his expression unreadable. He wasn't there for headlines. He was there for purpose. The Lakers held an introductory press conference inside the team's facility. Banners of legends hung overhead, the ghosts of greatness. Kobe, Shaq, Magic, LeBron. The weight of legacy was everywhere. When Luka sat down at the microphone, the room hushed.
He adjusted his mic, looked out at the crowd, and smiled. "I know this jersey means something. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to build something new." That line became instant headline material. It was respectful yet assertive, the perfect balance of humility and confidence that defined him. His arrival sent shockwaves across the league. The Lakers, once aging and inconsistent, suddenly looked reborn. Luka's presence alone changed everything. The offense shifted around his vision. The pace, the spacing, the energy, all transformed. Playing alongside Anthony Davis, Luka found something he hadn't had in years. A partner who could dominate both ends of the floor. Their chemistry was immediate. The pick and roll between them became lethal. Luka's court vision, paired with Davis's timing, created highlight reels nightly. But more than that, Luka brought joy back to Los Angeles basketball. The fans, used to drama and dynasty, fell in love with his flair, his humor, his authenticity. He wasn't trying to be Hollywood. He was just Luka, unfiltered, competitive, and magnetic. In his first season as a Laker, the team surged. Luka led the league in assists, ranked among the top scorers, and delivered clutch performances that reminded fans of the Lakers' golden eras. He was calm under pressure, fearless in big moments, and often smiling as he dismantled opponents. And then there was the atmosphere, the energy inside Crypto.com Arena, once Staples Center. Every game felt like a spectacle. Every possession a story. Fans wore Slovenian flags alongside purple and gold jerseys. A new chapter of Laker lore was being written one play at a time. But Luka's transition wasn't just about statistics or wins. It was about symbolism.
He had become the bridge between continents, a European prodigy leading one of America's most storied franchises. The dream that began in Ljubljana, that matured in Madrid, that tested itself in Dallas, had now reached the mountaintop of basketball fame. Of course, fame comes with expectation. The Lakers brand demands championships. Anything less is considered failure. Luka knew that, and rather than shy away, he embraced it. He began studying film of past Laker greats, how Kobe attacked double teams, how Magic controlled tempo, how LeBron carried the weight of the franchise with composure. But he never mimicked them. He learned their lessons and applied them his way. Reporters noticed a shift in his demeanor, less light-hearted, more focused. He still smiled, still joked, but beneath the surface was an intensity that burned hotter than ever. The playoffs that year were his proving ground. The Lakers faced powerhouse teams, each series a gauntlet. Luka played through pain, exhaustion, and relentless defense. His numbers were staggering, nearly 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists per game, while shooting efficiently and commanding double teams every night. He led the Lakers deep into the postseason, each round adding to his legend. And even when the team fell short of a title in his first season, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like foundation. The message was clear. The Lakers were back, and Luka was the reason. Off the court, Los Angeles changed Luka in subtle ways. The city was bigger, louder, and faster, but he didn't lose himself in it. He kept his circle small, family, close friends, teammates he trusted. He found peace in quiet mornings by the ocean, often seen practicing shots alone at sunrise. Fans called him the calm storm, a superstar who played with both serenity and ferocity. As his tenure continued, endorsements, global attention, and comparisons flooded in, but Luka's focus stayed narrow. When asked about legacy, he said, "Legacy isn't something you talk about, it's something you leave behind." That philosophy echoed through everything he did. Whether in Dallas blue or Laker gold, Luka's identity remained the same: a student of the game, a craftsman chasing perfection, a competitor who refused to settle. And though championships remained the ultimate goal, his presence alone already changed how people viewed international basketball. He wasn't a European succeeding in the NBA. He was an NBA player, full stop, redefining what that meant in the modern era. In Los Angeles, surrounded by the ghosts of champions and the glow of endless cameras, Luka Dončić stood as proof that greatness knows no borders. His journey had taken him from the quiet streets of Slovenia to the loudest arena in the world. He had conquered every stage along the way, not with brute force, but with artistry, intelligence, and joy.
And yet, he wasn't done, because Luka didn't just want to be remembered as the European who made it. He wanted to be remembered as one of the greatest, period. Away from the roar of arenas and the glow of spotlights, Luka Dončić's life beats to a quieter rhythm. The same young man who commands crowds of 20,000 with a single glance is, at his core, still the kid from Ljubljana, curious, grounded, and a little playful. The world sees the swagger, the step-backs, the celebrations, but behind that fire is a person who never lost sight of where he came from. Those close to him often describe Luka as humble, a word that feels almost too simple for someone whose fame has reached global levels. Yet it fits. He still calls his mother every day. He still visits Slovenia every summer, not for photo ops, but to spend time with the same friends he grew up with. When he walks through Ljubljana's streets, he's not a celebrity. He's just Luka. People wave, smile, and call out his name as if he never left.
At home, he loves simplicity, video games, his dogs, and long dinners with family. He doesn't chase the celebrity lifestyle that many in Los Angeles fall into. His joy comes from the ordinary: a barbecue with teammates, a late-night gaming session, a quiet morning coffee before practice. This grounded nature has made Luka one of the most relatable superstars in sports. Fans feel like they know him, not because he overshares, but because he's authentic. He laughs when he misses free throws, jokes with opponents, and shows emotion after big shots. There's no pretense, no script. He's as human as he is heroic. But Luka's identity extends far beyond personality. He represents something profound: the global evolution of basketball itself. For decades, the NBA was dominated by American narratives. The greats, Jordan, Magic, Bird, LeBron, Kobe, defined its mythology. But as Luka rose, he joined a new wave of international stars reshaping the league's identity. Alongside players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokić, and Joel Embiid, Luka became part of a movement that blurred borders. He didn't just enter the NBA, he redefined it.
His European foundation gave him a style that stood out in the American game, where many relied on athleticism. Luka relied on angles, intelligence, and feel. His moves were borrowed from the playgrounds of Slovenia, the gyms of Madrid, and the artistry of countless international influences. He made the NBA look like a global mosaic, one where creativity mattered as much as power.
Coaches often say Luka's game feels old school and futuristic at the same time. He has the patience of players from the 1980s, combined with the range and vision of modern basketball. It's not just evolution, it's synthesis. And with that came influence. In Europe, Luka became a symbol of possibility. Young players across the continent began dreaming differently. They no longer saw the NBA as a distant dream. They saw it as a reachable goal. In gyms from Belgrade to Berlin, from Paris to Prague, kids practiced step-backs and precision passes, whispering his name as they played. Back in Slovenia, basketball participation skyrocketed. The national team became a source of renewed pride, and Luka's jerseys sold out across the country. He wasn't just a sports hero, he was cultural representation, living proof that small nations can produce giants. He used that platform responsibly. Luka launched initiatives to support children's hospitals in Slovenia, donated to causes across Europe, and quietly funded basketball courts in underprivileged areas. He never announced most of it publicly. He preferred to let the work speak for itself.
When asked once why he gave so much back, he shrugged and said, "Because I remember being that kid who needed a ball and a place to play." In Los Angeles, Luka's influence extended beyond basketball. He became an ambassador for European athletes adjusting to American life. Younger international players often sought him out for advice. How to deal with media, how to stay focused amid fame, how to carry the expectations of two continents. He'd always tell them the same thing: be yourself. Don't change your game to fit in. Make them adjust to you. That mindset, defiant, confident, yet genuine, shaped an entire generation of players who no longer felt the need to emulate American stars. They could bring their own styles, their own cultures, and still thrive. Even in the fashion and entertainment world, Luka's quiet charisma turned heads. He graced magazine covers, appeared in commercials, and signed deals with global brands. Yet, even there, he stayed true to himself. His endorsements reflected who he was. No flash, no exaggeration, just excellence delivered effortlessly.
But Luka's off-court life wasn't without challenges. Fame brings scrutiny, and in a city like Los Angeles, privacy is rare. Rumors, criticisms, and constant comparison followed him everywhere. He handled it the only way he knew how, by keeping his circle small and his focus sharp. When asked about the pressures of being a superstar, Luka smiled and said, "Pressure? I've felt pressure since I was 13, leaving home for Madrid. Everything since then has been basketball. I know who I am." That sense of self, anchored, unshakable, may be Luka's greatest strength. It's what keeps him grounded through fame and failure, victories and heartbreak. He doesn't chase validation. He builds legacy.
His legacy isn't only in points or trophies, but in the invisible threads connecting continents. The dream of a Slovenian boy echoing through NBA arenas, inspiring kids in both hemispheres. In Slovenia, murals of Luka decorate walls, not of him holding a trophy, but smiling, passing, playing. To his country, he's not just an athlete, he's a reminder that greatness can come from anywhere, if you believe long enough and work hard enough. In the NBA, his name sits among legends, but his presence feels different. He doesn't just play in America. He represents what basketball has become, a universal art form, shared across languages, nations, and generations.
Off the court, Luka carries himself like a man aware of the story he's writing. He's careful with his words, deliberate with his actions. He understands that kids watch not just how he plays, but how he behaves. He often says, "I want to make people love basketball the way I do." And he has. From the streets of Ljubljana to the boulevards of Los Angeles, Luka Dončić's impact radiates far beyond stat sheets and scoreboards. He's a bridge between worlds, Europe's finest export and America's adopted son. He didn't just conquer the NBA, he connected it. And in doing so, he reminded everyone that basketball, at its heart, is about joy, imagination, and connection. Every era of basketball has its defining question, the one fans debate endlessly, the one that lingers in conversations long after the buzzer sounds. For Luka Dončić, that question has become clear. How high can he go? By his mid-20s, Luka had already built a resume that most players spend decades chasing. Multiple All-NBA selections, All-Star appearances, record-breaking stat lines, and a legacy that stretched far beyond national borders. Yet, watching him play, there's an undeniable feeling that he's only just beginning.
It's not just about talent, it's about trajectory. Luka's growth curve hasn't plateaued. It's still climbing. Every season he finds something new to master, something to refine. And that's what makes the question of his ceiling so fascinating. Because for Luka, there may not be one. From a purely statistical perspective, his numbers already place him among the all-time greats. Few players in NBA history have matched his production so early. Points, assists, rebounds, efficiency, all wrapped into one player who controls every aspect of the game. He's the youngest player in history to record multiple 40-point triple-doubles. He's one of the few ever to average 30-plus points and nearly 10 assists per game over a full season. Analysts compare his output to LeBron in his prime, Magic in his command, and Bird in his fearlessness. But Luka's greatness isn't just in the numbers. It's in the how. He doesn't rely on athletic peaks that fade with age. His game is built on intelligence, the ability to read, anticipate, and dictate. Like chess masters, he wins with precision, not power.
That's why experts believe his prime could last longer than most. He plays at a pace he controls, a timeless rhythm immune to time itself. And yet, even in his dominance, Luka remains restless. He studies constantly. Teammates say he'll stay up until 3 a.m. watching film of his own games, pausing to analyze each defensive read, each subtle mistake. He's obsessed, but not consumed, motivated by curiosity as much as competition. When asked what drives him, Luka once said, There's always something I can do better. That mindset, perpetual improvement, separates stars from legends. Still, even the greatest need context. And in Luka's case, the conversation always circles back to championships. Fans, pundits, and historians all measure legacy by rings. Fair or not, that's the standard, and Luka knows it. He's experienced personal brilliance and collective frustration. He's seen the joy of deep playoff runs and the sting of coming up short. But rather than let those moments define him, he uses them as fuel. The fire of unfinished business burns quietly behind every smile, every shrug after a clutch shot.
Many players shrink under expectation. Luka seems to thrive in it. When the spotlight grows hotter, his game expands. He wants the ball when the clock ticks down, not because of ego, but because he believes, truly believes, that he can make magic happen. That faith has earned him comparisons to some of the game's immortals. Magic Johnson for vision, Larry Bird for IQ and confidence, LeBron James for versatility and leadership, James Harden for creativity and unpredictability, Nikola Jokić for pace and cerebral dominance. Yet none of those comparisons fit perfectly, because Luka isn't a replica. He's a fusion of eras, the old soul of European discipline blended with the freedom of modern basketball. When analysts try to rank him among all-time greats, the conversation always circles back to one phrase: he's doing it his way. That's the essence of Luka Dončić, an artist painting with his own brush. But greatness also comes with weight. The higher Luka climbs, the more every detail is scrutinized. His conditioning, defense, leadership, body language. The expectations that once fueled admiration now carry demands.
And still, he doesn't waver. Every off-season, Luka evolves. One summer, he trims down and improves endurance. The next, he expands his shooting range or strengthens his post-game. There's a rhythm to his evolution, always deliberate, never reactionary. He's learning what true greatness requires: patience, not perfection. In the modern NBA, where the game moves faster and narratives change daily, Luka's steadiness feels like an anchor. While others chase headlines, he chases improvement. While others talk legacy, he builds it, brick by brick, season by season, and the results are undeniable. The records continue to fall. The list of players he's passed in milestones grows longer. Every night, it seems, he joins or surpasses another legend in the record books, yet he rarely celebrates. He'll smile, nod, and move on, because to Luka, history isn't about moments, it's about consistency. Still, the hunger for that ultimate validation, an NBA championship, lingers. It's the one line missing from his story, the one mountain left to climb. If he wins one, the conversation changes forever. If he wins multiple, the conversation ends entirely. He would move from generational to transcendent.
And with the Lakers' resources and star power, that dream doesn't feel distant. Surrounded by talent, Luka has the tools and experience to finally translate his brilliance
into banners. It's not a question of if, only when. Beyond the court, Luka's potential stretches further still. He's poised to become one of basketball's true global ambassadors. A bridge between the NBA's future and the world's passion for the game. His fan base already spans continents. His jersey a staple from Tokyo to Madrid to Manila. He represents more than a team or a league. He represents possibility. That a child from a small European city can dream big enough to touch the stars. And that's where Luka's story transcends sport. He's not chasing ghosts or trying to outshine legends. He's writing his own mythology, a blend of hard work, heritage, and humility. He's reminding the world that genius doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles, shrugs, and quietly changes everything. The ceiling? There might not be one.
Because Luka Dončić isn't climbing toward greatness. He's expanding it. Each season, he redefines what's possible. Each game, he adds a new chapter. Each moment, he proves that the magic of basketball isn't just in the numbers, but in the feeling it leaves behind, that spark of awe, that quiet smile when you realize you're watching something rare. And maybe that's Luka's true gift, not just to dominate the game, but to make people feel it again, to make basketball an art form, a language of wonder. The records will come, the rings too. But even if they didn't, Luka's story has already conquered what matters most, hearts. He's the European prodigy who grew up before our eyes, who defied expectation, who carried continents on his shoulders, and somehow made it look easy. Yet when asked what drives him, he still answers simply, "I just love to play." And in those 5 words lies the secret to his endless potential. Because when you love the game that deeply, there is no ceiling, only sky.
Every generation has its storytellers, not in words, but in movement, players who turn games into narratives, who make every dribble, every pass, every step back feel like a line of poetry. Luka Dončić is one of them. But his story is more than a highlight reel. It's a journey, a mosaic of courage, faith, and relentless evolution. From the narrow streets of Ljubljana to the echoing arenas of Los Angeles, Luka's rise isn't just about basketball. It's about belief, the kind that defies logic and geography alike. When he was a child, he used to shoot hoops on cracked pavement, the sound of the ball bouncing between apartment buildings. The dreams that began there weren't about fame or wealth. They were about love, love for a game that would take him further than he could imagine. That love carried him across borders, languages, and expectations. It took him from a shy Slovenian teenager to a Real Madrid prodigy, from a European champion to an NBA's superstar. Each chapter of his life built upon the last, each challenge shaping him into something sharper, calmer, wiser. He became a man who doesn't just play basketball, he sees it. He reads its rhythm the way musicians read notes, bending time and space until everything moves to his tempo. When Luka steps on the floor, the game slows, the crowd holds its breath, and the moment belongs to him.
And yet, for all the brilliance, Luka's story is human. It's filled with fatigue, frustration, doubt, and determination. There were nights he walked off the court exhausted, sweat stinging his eyes, replaying missed shots in his mind. There were seasons that ended in heartbreak, moments when the dream seemed just out of reach, but he never stopped showing up. That's the thing about Luka. He endures. He doesn't chase perfection, he pursues progress. It's that resilience that's turned him into more than a player. To Slovenia, he's a national symbol. To Europe, a testament to possibility. To the NBA, a reminder that greatness doesn't care where you're born, only how much you're willing to give. In many ways, Luka embodies the evolution of basketball itself, a global game played with artistry and intelligence, where borders blur and brilliance speaks for itself. He doesn't fit into categories or comparisons. He isn't just the next LeBron or the European Magic. He's the first, Luka Dončić, and that in itself is legacy. As his career continues, the milestones will multiply. MVP trophies, scoring titles, playoff records, all within reach. Championships will come because players like Luka don't settle for almost. They find a way. It may take time, but time has always been his ally.
And when that day comes, when the final buzzer sounds in a championship arena and Luka stands there, confetti falling, eyes lifted toward the rafters, it won't just be a victory for him. It'll be for everyone who ever believed that greatness could be quiet, thoughtful, and joyful all at once. Because Luka's greatness isn't loud. It's in the smirk after a ridiculous shot, the wink at a teammate, the shrug after an impossible pass. It's in the way he makes the extraordinary feel effortless. He's not a player who dominates you with power. He disarms you with imagination. Every dribble is a sentence. Every move a paragraph, every game a chapter in a story that the world keeps reading with awe. In Dallas, they still remember the boy who arrived speaking little English but spoke fluently in basketball. In Madrid, they remember the teenager who conquered Europe with calm beyond his years. In Slovenia, they remember the kid who turned their flag into a symbol of pride on a global stage. And in Los Angeles, they now watch the man, the leader, the artist, the conqueror, carrying forward the legacy of those who came before while crafting one of his own. But if you asked Luka where he's headed next, he'd probably smile and say something simple, just trying to get better.
Because for him, it's never been about the destination. It's about the process, the craft, the endless pursuit of mastery. He plays for the love of it, and that's what makes him timeless. Long after the cheers fade, after the records are broken and banners raised, Luka Dončic's legacy will live not just in statistics, but in feeling, the feeling he gave to millions watching around the world, the feeling of possibility that somewhere, right now, a kid is standing on a cracked court, shooting until sunset, believing that maybe, just maybe, he could do it too. Because Luka already showed him that it's possible. He showed him that greatness isn't inherited, it's built, that talent is only the beginning, and heart is what carries you the rest of the way. He showed him that you can come from a small country, from quiet streets, from humble beginnings, and still conquer the biggest stages.
He showed him that you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to play. And so, as the world watches Luka Dončić continue his climb from prodigy to icon, from dreamer to legend, one truth echoes louder than any arena cheer. This is what it looks like when passion meets purpose. This is what it looks like when love for the game becomes destiny. This is the story of a European prodigy who didn't just enter the NBA, he conquered it. And he's not done yet. And as the lights fade and the echoes of the crowd quiet to a soft hum, remember, stories like this remind us that dreams have no borders. That even in a game of giants, heart and imagination can lift you higher than anyone expects. If this story helped you drift, inspired you, or made you see the game in a new light, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again for the next night's story. For now, rest easy, dream deeply, and remember, greatness, like Luka Dončić's story, always begins with a single bounce in the dark.